Okay. Good evening. For those of you who have just joined us after closed session, welcome to this hybrid regular meeting of the Board of Trustees. I am Lisa Pelosi, Board President, and I would like to introduce my fellow trustees, Laura Simon, Sean Mora, Jeannie Kerr, and Jean Marie Wolf, and our student representative to the board, Miss Carolyn Wagner. I would also like to introduce our district staff, Superintendent Ruben Aurelio, Assistant Superintendent Mr. Christopher Heller, Chief Business Official Dr. Kay Vang, Director of Educational Services, Miss Veronica Miranda, Executive Assistant to the Superintendent and the Governing Board, Miss Erica Madrigal, Executive Assistant to the Assistant Superintendent, Miss Melissa Hansen, Director of Technology, Mr. Derek Machado. Also joining us are additional site administrators in the audience: St. Helena High School Principal, Mr. Benjamin Cinto, RLS Middle School Principal, Mr. Andrew Ryan, St. Helena Elementary School Principal, Dr. Carmen Emery, and St. Helena Primary School Principal, Mrs. Rebecca Rocha. We are delighted that you are viewing in person, on Zoom, on television channel 27, or on our YouTube channel. A copy of this board meeting video will also be available on our website at www.stheleniaunified.org. In connection with items 4A, 4B, and 4C, the board received information and provided staff with direction. If you would join me now in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, item 6A is public comments for items not on the agenda. We have a brief overview on the screen there. There is a 3-minute time limit on public comment. Is there anyone present who would like to make a public comment on an item not on the agenda? Okay. Nothing via Zoom or, okay, thank you. Okay, so we're going to go on. We always like to kick it off this way with presentations, and this will be Carolyn Wagner, presentation to the board from our student representative, please.
Good evening. Tonight's a little bit different. Instead of reporting on the schools, I'm actually going to be doing a reflection on a conference I attended in November. So the CSBA takes student board representatives all from California to meet with each other and just discuss best practices for our position. So we were in a conference from 8 a.m. until maybe around 3 or 4 with a lunch, of course. And we learned all sorts of things. We talked about great leaders in our world and how to advocate for each other at a young age. And I found it very beneficial. So thank you for letting me have the opportunity. It was very informative, and I feel like I really can refine my skills as a student board representative. So one of the things that stood out to me was creating substantial priorities that fit not only what the students and student leadership thinks is important, but also what the board views as important. So while I was sitting there and listening to them tell me, what I should prioritize, I thought about student achievement and engagement as one of our biggest areas of improvement. So at Student Congress, which I actually wasn't at, but I got briefed on, not only did the leadership class, but representatives from our student body identified academic motivation as one of our biggest areas of improvement. So to see that align with the LCAP, it makes me really excited about what we can do on the administrative side and with the board. So another thing that I found interesting was a lot of the student board reps didn't have great relationships with their board members, which of course I cannot say is the same for me. So one of the things they stressed was to foster positive and professional relationships. So I would also like to thank you all for being so welcoming and so understanding of student voice and really letting me speak my truth and the truth of my peers. And then assuring accountability. So the projects that we set out, not only in leadership, but also as a board, our goals, how do we ensure that accountability? So it was just really nice to see everything that we talk about here being reinforced there and learn new tools. That was really great. So I'm just really grateful to this district, and I just wanted to thank you all. I mean, it's very fitting because January is the month that we recognize the Board of Education. So everyone at the dais, I thank you so much. From me to all the students in the district, we really appreciate the effort that you all put in here, and I can really see it in our schools. So thank you.
Thank you. That's great. Where was the conference? Was it a conference that you? So it was that one, or did you attend another one? Okay.
It's CSBA.
Okay, sorry, because when you said like November, for some reason I was thinking earlier in November, not the CSBA one. And to that point, this just ties in with a conversation I had with the superintendent, and you hit on a couple of things. And I think one of the things that would be helpful, if perhaps we can meet one-on-one, because one of the things when I went to a student board representative seminar breakout session was the onboarding process for student reps, and how there's the assumption that you just kind of know what a board meeting's all about, and when you walk into something you don't really understand. So I just would love to, maybe we can sit and have lunch one day and kind of just pick your brain a little bit as we move forward, and making sure that student voice really is meaningful, and that it's bringing to the dais what it should be bringing to the dais, if that makes sense. So,
Of course, yes, I
thank
totally
you.
agree.
And I'm sorry about that. I guess CSBA seems like a lifetime ago already. So,
Yeah, I think the first day was still November, so that's why.
yeah, that's probably what threw me as well.
Uh-huh.
So, thank you so much. Okay, now we're going to move on to another great presentation. This is the recognition of the St. Helena Unified School District Classified School Employees of the Year. Mr. Aurelio, please.
Well, this is a great presentation to give. We have some wonderful people in the audience that we're going to be recognizing. So it is the Classified School Employee of the Year. And just some background, we do accept nominations from the community members, from parents, from peers, students, and supervisors. We did collect nominations in a variety of ways, from email. We shared a parent square with staff to collect those as well, and then there was links on our website. So these are the categories that CSEA recognizes for classified employees, and you can see there's 9 different categories. Now, we don't have all 9 of these that we're recognizing this evening, but these are the different categories that we are able to then send our representatives to the county level, where they will compete for county level employees of the year, and if they win that, they get to go on to the state level. So it's really a fantastic honor for our employees. So we had a window for nominations, November 6th to the 17th. Really happy to hear that we had 55 nominations. You can see sort of the breakdown and where they came from. I love to see that the peers are nominating each other. That's fantastic. Next slide. So we have a variety of different winners, and it was really appropriate to provide some quotes from the supervisors, because the supervisors have to write a letter, a recommendation letter with the nomination. And so we did lift these from those letters. So for Lorena Godinez from RLS, Mr. Andrew Ryan, who I know is in the room, writes, "Miss Godinez is truly the heartbeat of our school, providing the rhythm that keeps us all on schedule and ensuring a smooth operation of daily activities. Her commitment to fostering an environment of self-advocacy, accountability, and respect among our students is commendable. Ms. Godinez's deep understanding of each student at RLS is evident in her unwavering dedication to their well-being, health, and safety." And every time I've been to that school, I get the biggest smile from Lorena, and it is very nice. I love checking in with her when I come in and checking in how the day's going. It's just fantastic. And I've even seen her interact with our students, and I agree with the statement from Mr. Principal Ryan. So for custodial and maintenance, we have Martha Rubio. Is she here? Where's Martha? There's Martha. Yay. Now, Martha also cleans in here, so I know how hard she works. So Benjamin Cinto writes, "Mrs. Rubio's competence, passion, and organization for work ultimately proved she was able and ready to become our lead custodian for the 2019-20 school year. She is organized, reliable, motivated, and consistently exemplifies respect and integrity, essential characteristics of an effective leader. As both her supervisors and friends, we recommend her without reservation." And I wholeheartedly agree with that statement. I think we all can, who are sitting here at this table. She does tremendous work and always is just so professional and willing to help when needed. Paraprofessional Services Employee of the Year is for Suzanne Lau, and I know you're there. Yep, there you are. And Suzanne works here in our St. Helena High School library. And that's a fantastic space. I've seen that space change even from my short time here due to Suzanne's touches in really reorganizing that space, making it really student-centered. So Mr. Cinto writes, by both aptitude and design, Suzanne creates a most welcoming and enriching space for all students. With 2 sons of her own, Suzanne relates well to kids, fostering a mutual respect that extends beyond the walls of the library. This connection to students is evidenced through her depth and breadth of literature, enabling her to recommend books that match students' specific interests. Her care for and rapport with students and collaboration with others make her a most deserving candidate for this recognition. And once again, wholeheartedly agree with those statements. Our final recognition here is for transportation services, Mr. Roberto Lopez. Are you here? No? All right, well, we'll recognize him anyways because he, and Dr. Vang is his recommender, and you can see what she wrote. I should make Dr. Vang read it, but I'll go ahead and read it for you. He does an exceptional job as a school bus driver, and I concur. I rode in his bus, and he drives some scary roads, I have to say. His calmness on those rides with students. Roberto always maintains a positive, collaborative, and professional attitude. Roberto is exceptionally reliable and friendly and provides great customer service for our district students and families. During my ride along, well, see, she went on one too. I was amazed that he knew every student by their name. I observed Roberto greeting each student who got on his bus with a big, warm smile. Roberto understands that he is the first staff member students see every morning and that his actions make a difference. And I agree with that as well. A side note, Roberto was a student here at St. Helena High. I learned that when I rode with him. He was a newcomer and he came to our high school. So with that, we would like to honor our employees. As I mentioned, the steps for them moving forward, they are going to go on to the county level, and there will be an appreciation event on May 1st. I hope to see all of you there for that. And then finalists would be revealed at an event on the 22nd of May. So we would like to call them up.
Absolutely. We can do that, but I do believe there is somebody who would like to make a public comment on that. So please, yes.
Good evening, Mr. Aurelio. Good evening, Mr. Heller. Good evening, Madam President Pelosi. I'm not very good at public speaking, but I've worked with the 4 of them, and I just feel that they're very deserving, they're very compassionate, and they love our kids, and it comes through with everything they do around our kids. So I thank you for honoring them, and I will see you May 1st. And then I did a little bad thing. I forgot Mrs. Wolf on 6A. I was going to make a public comment thanking you for the goodies on back to school. So I'm sorry I'm not following the rules. But and can I say congratulations to my friends? You did it. Yay. Thank you. That was less than 3.
You did great, Mrs. Montelli. Thank you so much. Okay, so now, yes, we would love to call forward our employees.
And we call them, give them opportunity if they want to say a few words.
Like to, absolutely. We'd love to hear from you. But I understand not everybody's comfortable in front of a microphone, but we would love to come speak if you'd like. Otherwise, come on up so we can shake your hands and clap for you and say thank you, thank you, thank you.
Why don't we go back in order? Lorena, we'll start with Lorena. Come on up, Lorena.
This is like the receiving one.
Yeah.
It's nice to see you. I know. Congratulations. Thank you.
Want to get a picture with everybody at the end? Is that what you want to do?
Yeah, photo
At the end? So next we'll have Martha Rubio, and we'll do a photo at the end with everybody up here. We'll get everybody. So Martha, up to you. invite Suzanne Lowe.
Congratulations. Appreciate it. All the hard work.
So we don't have Roberto here. So should we do a photo op?
I think we're gonna go this way, right? Yeah, it's just. Erica's our handler. She- Yes. We're just going to take a quick 5-minute break for anybody who may need to leave, and then anybody who may you need to use the restroom. And so just 5 minutes. Thank you. Okay. We good back there? We're gonna. Okay. I'm good? Am I live? I'm live. Okay. That's what I. No, that's a good start. I hate to do, I would rather celebrate all that, but we do have an agenda to get through. Thank you again, everybody. Okay, we're going to now move on to facilities under 8A, and we have the solar feasibility analysis from Recolt Energy. And I'm going to call on Dr. Vang first.
Thank you, President Pelosi. So I have Mr. Gopal Shankar, who's the president of Recolte Energy here. As you know, we've been discussing energy conservation in this district. Mr. Gopal is here today to provide us with an updated analysis of our PG&E usage data, along with our PG&E approved NEM 2 applications, which grandfathers us into the NEM 2 rates rather than increasing costs of the NEM 3, which Mr. Gopal will talk a little bit about in his presentation, and then also a recommendation as to next steps for the district. Mr. Gopal.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Sorry, I'm very informal, but I'm not sure about all these procedures, how to address you, but I hope that works. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so I want to go through a little bit of what the...
I'll get it after, no worries. Sorry about the interruption.
What the original scope was when I was hired, and what it's going to look like today. Updates on your electricity bills. Bad news, the rates have gone up again since the first of this year, so the numbers I present are understating your bills. The NEM 2 applications, and anyone wants background on what some of the stuff means, let me know. Site maps, savings analysis, and then all the other things that we have to try to do, because just producing electricity to offset your bills isn't enough. You don't have enough real estate to offset your bills just by production. All right, next slide, please. Yeah, so my scope initially was just to look at all possibilities. I think the last time I spoke to you all in May or something of last year, I had mentioned linear generators and so on and so forth. All that has been eliminated, and it has been eliminated for a couple of reasons. The major one is PG&E's rules and regulations just won't allow us to do what we want to do. So it's simplified to solar. There are SiteLogic is a company that submitted interconnection applications for the district. One at the primary school, one at the elementary school, one at RLS, and one at the St. Helena High School. And as of this morning, I have confirmation that at least 2 of the sites, the applications have been as I've wanted them to be, that I think are working. They're called meet aggregation applications. I'm waiting for confirmation that at RLS, that's also, excuse me, not at RLS, at the elementary school, that's also what has been submitted, but I don't know that yet, okay? So, yeah, back to the bottom part of the slide. So there's no linear generator, there's no electric vehicle charging stations that I had thought about earlier, no batteries, and no microgrids. Next slide, please. So this is, these are my estimates of your bills based on data between the 1st of December 2022 and the 30th of November 2023. So almost, I mean, a year, but it's not the most current usage. But these bills are pretty much what what you're going to experience now. If you consume the same amount of electricity using the same patterns, your bills would be as high as these, and maybe slightly higher, because I think PG&E's rate increase January 1st is another 15%. So it's a big number, yeah. 20. Okay. Yeah. So again, I need to say this, right? We have become so used to walking into a room, flipping a light switch on. We don't have a choice, in a room full of lights come on. We want comfortable temperatures all the time, and so all of that is just costing us money. There's nothing we can do other than try to implement as many of these conservation measures and so forth as possible. And what you cannot eliminate, then you try to produce electricity to offset. But there's certain numbers over here that I think will be very revealing. And again, just some more background on this. PG&E has these rate thresholds, right? So if your peak demand is 75 kilowatts or less, you're eligible to be on what's called a B1 tariff. If you go above 75 kilowatts, then you go to a B10 tariff. And when you go to this higher tariff, you're getting charged for demand and for energy. Demand means the amount of electricity you consume in any one given instant. So if you turn on all your lights at the same time, PG&E has to have capacity to serve that instantaneous load. And so they charge you a lot of money for that. And then for how long you consume that energy, they charge, it's called the energy charge, right? So if you're on a B1 tariff, then there are no demand charges that are separate, but your energy charges are higher to accommodate that demand. And the benefit of being on one of those tariffs, like the B1, rather than if you have solar, it means all of your solar electricity, the energy, is offsetting your energy charges. If, on the other hand, you have a B10 tariff, then it's only the energy that's offset, right? So unless you have your solar production that coincides with your demand peak, there's nothing you can do to reduce your demand charges, right? This is being a little too wonky, I think, but it's important to understand because you have to be able to do what you can to reduce both your demand and your energy. And solar only affects your energy, not your demand, okay? So next slide, please. Look at what I have, highlighted in red. That's the last column. So you have these demand charges for the maintenance and operations meter. It also serves, I think, your football field lights probably. And you can see that's a very high average rate of 57 cents roughly per kilowatt hour. And that's because your stadium lights or whatever your outdoor lights come on all at once and your demand is spiking. So that's the impact that you have, right? I mean, that these rate tariffs have. Okay, next slide, please. It's hard to read this, but these are the 4 interconnection applications that have been submitted by SiteLogic. Each of these applications is tied to a specific meter. So at the primary school, they have just one meter, so it's not an issue. At the elementary school, it's tied to the meter that's in the cafeteria building. And that's the confirmation I'm waiting to hear from SiteLogic to see if they have used a meter, if they've submitted a meter aggregation application so that the overproduction from the meter that this is tied to can be applied to the meter that I think you call it in the dungeon, right? It's in another part of that campus. And if they haven't, I don't think it'll matter. I think I can go back and revise it so that overproduction can be applied. RLS, it's tied to the meter that the existing solar is tied to. So we have a problem over there, and we'll be able to see that from the pictures that come up in a couple of slides. But the closer the solar production, the solar arrays are to the meter that are being tied to, the less expensive it gets in terms of trenching costs and so forth. So we have to be able to find locations that are fairly proximate to the meters. And the last one is the high school. So the high school meter is the maintenance and operations meter. And once again, meter aggregation will be used to offset at least some of the other meters that you have on this campus. And I think there are a total of 4 of them. Next slide, please. 4 existing, and we'll get to this, but there will be a new bus charging meter next to the MNO building. Next slide, please. Thanks. All right, so this one's fairly straightforward. This is the primary school, solar in the parking lot, and it's relatively close to where the meter is located. I'm not sure what the building, what the room is called. Is it the auditorium? The barn, yeah. So it's right there. So it's a straightforward shot. Next one, please. Yeah. So this and by the way, these pictures are based on what SiteLogic has submitted, and I don't think these two arrays as they've been shown are going to be the appropriate ones. I was proposing, and again, I'm going to look for feedback from all of you, is to have the array go in between that, that long rectangular piece between the Boys and Girls Club, that essentially that open pathway, that passageway, because the meter is right next to the cafeteria building. And one of my proposals, this is in the last section, is I know the Boys and Girls Club has been talking to me since 2008, saying we want to have solar at the site. So potentially, given that they seem to have access to money, but it's the district's property, maybe you can come up with some kind of an agreement with them that they pay for their own solar, but it's just part of this array that's sectioned off for them, and the solar this 143 kilowatt system offsets the 2 meters that that are the elementary schools, one in the cafeteria building and one for the rest of the school. Anyway, that's just something to consider. Next slide, please. This is the one that's tricky. We have to find a more appropriate location than this one. I don't know if you can tell where the existing solar is, but that's right next to the meter that it feeds. And there is no room that I can see at the moment where solar can be installed that is close to that area. So that's going to require a little bit of thinking. Next slide, please. And this one I think is also going to change. Solar, the long array that we see, which is, what is it, on the southwest side, just this next to the baseball field, that may move over next to the M&O building. And I think we can use the southwest facing roof of the M&O building because there are no students in that building. So we don't have to get caught up with DSA, the Division of State Architect, to get that approved. So I think there's a better way to move those solar modules around. And again, this will be tied to the M&O meter only. That's it. Next slide, please. Yeah, so the applications as they have been submitted are offsetting either a part of, depending on how many meters are being offset, between 44% and 73%, or actually at RLS's case, 100% of the existing meters, right? So the only alternative you have to keep reducing your costs are to consider all these other options, like LED lighting upgrades and more energy efficiency measures and so forth. Next slide, please. Yeah, so these are the savings estimates based on, and the savings estimates will be higher, right? Because PG&E's rates have gone up, so that these numbers look better. But so the solar production gets allocated to the meters in some complicated formula that PG&E uses, and those are the savings estimates based on, based on the current system sizes as proposed by SiteLogic. Next slide. Has been approved by PG&E. Next slide. Yeah. So what I'm estimating is that the savings will be about $250,000 a year based on this, and my proposal to all my clients, for-profit clients, non-profit clients, is even if you have the money, don't own these systems anymore, right? So if someone else owns and operates and puts it on your rooftop or your property, and they're just selling you the power that it generates, you're not paying for the system, you're paying for the energy that it generates. If they can do it at 26 cents a kilowatt hour, then you break even. Then you can say you have solar, you don't save anything other than savings in future PG&E, right? Savings from future price increases from PG&E. But if they can come in at something less than that 26 cents a kilowatt hour, then you start to save money in the first year itself. This way, you don't have to expend a dime until the system has been installed, producing electricity, commissioned, and so on and so forth. One of the 4 applications, this is the one for the St. Helena High School site, requires a transformer upgrade. I have just drafted an email. I haven't sent it out to PG&E. There are 3 different departments within PG&E, and I have to get them to talk to each other, because for the new bus charging meter, PG&E has to upgrade the transformer there. And if they have to upgrade the transformer and they're going to do it on their dime, that same transformer doesn't have to be paid for, for the solar part. So I want to put the solar portion on hold until that piece is done, and then go back to PG&E and say, we have an upgraded transformer now. We don't need to do this again, do we? So we'll see. It's fingers crossed on that one. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, so these are the other measures to consider, what can be done. And so this is not a meter that's being offset by solar. This is this is the elementary school's main meter. And again, I'm just speculating. I don't know what's causing those spikes. But is it air conditioning? Is it because of that black top there just absorbing all the heat from the sun, and so you have to have the classrooms work even harder to keep cool? Next slide. This is the maintenance and operations meter. You can see that when there's nothing going on, the dark. It's just a few kilowatts, right? That's being consumed 24/7, and then presumably the slightly higher peaks are when employees come into work, but the big spikes are because of the lights going on, I think, but I don't know, right? You have to find all these things out. Next slide. This is the auditorium, and so this is where you can see that it's quite critical that you stay below the 75 kilowatt threshold. So PG&E, if you hit the 75 kilowatt threshold 3 times in a year, they'll bump you up to the higher rate tariff. And so you can see over here, there's one night or one event a year where, so you're safe, but if that happens multiple times, you get bumped into the higher rate tariff, and so is there a way to manage those, those peaks? One more slide, I think. Yeah, and this is, I think, I'm not sure if it serves this building, but this is the main meter for this campus. And so 24/7, you're consuming 50 kilowatts of demand. So where's that going? What's happening when there's nobody here is something to find out. Maybe you have. Isn't IT next? It's here. No, there's something that's by the M&O meter building, isn't there? I thought that was your IT. Yeah. Anyway, so this is the kind of stuff that bears doing some investigation. Yeah, find out what's going on. Next slide, please. This is another place, Vintage Hall demand. So, I did the analysis. It turns out you're on one of these tariffs with demand charges, but for whatever reason, it's the more advantageous tariff to be on right now. So, this is one of those sleeping dogs. Let them lie until after you have gone solar, and then you switch to the B1 tariff. Yeah. Next slide. All right. So I think I have enough to write a RFP to get solar for these 4 sites. And I'll write the RFP again with your approval, of course. I'll ask for both installation cost and also a PPA, and see what we get. And the decisions about the Boys and Girls Club, etc., all that doesn't have to be made now, right? It's just let the RFP go out, let the bids come in, and see who's going to be building and at what stage. But the other things that I think can or should be done in parallel are what can you do to reduce your, and then just separate items. This is usually nothing that I have anything to do with, but Once people pay me, I'm willing to do anything. So I'm helping figure out how to help you reduce your gas costs. And so we have a conversation with Commercial Energy. They're a third-party supplier of natural gas. Yeah, this is some more background. Maybe you don't know, but until now, your gas supplier has been a joint powers authority called SPUR. SPUR has decided to move away from it, and they're encouraging all of their clients to go to ABAG, which is another joint powers authority. That's Association of Bay Area Governments. I spoke to someone from ABAG a couple of days ago, and he said that ABAG's procurement costs have been higher than PG&E's and higher than SPUR's historically. So there's no cost advantage to going to them. It's just that if you say, well, I'd rather give my money to a government agency rather than to a private entity, but sometimes private entities do better than governments, and so this may be one of those instances. But once we've had a meeting with Commercial Energy, we'll evaluate these three alternatives. I'm not sure how much money they can save you, because just like with electricity, I think you know this, but if you look at a PG&E bill and you unbundle it, there's the generation component, and there's transmission, distribution, and so on and so forth. The generation piece is supplied by MCE right now. MCE's portion constitutes 25%, or will constitute about 25% of the bill. 75% is to move electrons around. That's PG&E's portion. That same math is applying in the gas world too. So even if gas comes to you free, transporting it is costing a lot of money, right? So yeah, you don't have much. And unlike with electricity, where you can produce solar to offset your overall bill, you don't have that option with gas. So the only way to reduce your gas costs are to do what I think the world is heading in the direction of getting rid of fossil fuels, even for heating, and so seeing if you can replace your heaters with your gas heaters and gas hot water heaters with heat pump equivalents. Okay. I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Is there any public comment on this agenda item? Okay, trustees, any questions about this agenda item?
Hi, could you educate me on I understand that the solar panels need to be near the meters. Thank you. But why can they not be placed on the ceiling, on the roofs?
They can be, but the moment you put something on a roof on a school campus, the Division of State Architect gets involved.
Okay.
And if your roof has to, the burden on compliance for schools is only second to the burden that's placed on hospitals. I think you heard this from, right? So it's very stringent, and so unless it's new construction, the roofs have been designed to accommodate solar and so forth, it's just easier to stay off of it to get quick approval.
So it's about a faster approval. It's
faster
not that it's
and
not
faster
possible.
and less expensive, yeah.
And less expensive.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, so with these carport structures, or if you have a ground mount that's fenced off, it's not DSA extensive review. They just want to make sure that you're compliant, because the carport structures are what are called pre-certified. So as long as they've already been approved by the DSA, you can go and you just install them, and you're essentially letting the DSA know that this is what you're doing, and not seeking their approval. I mean, they'll review it, but it's not that deep. Sure.
Trustees?
I do have, because I get confused in there. So we're proposing that all the equipment, we're not having someone come in and we're renting it, right? You're proposing that we own everything.
No,
No,
the
okay.
opposite. So it's not renting either, right? So it's not a lease, it's not ownership. It's just imagine that, like you now only pay PG&E for electricity when you consume that electricity, right? you're not paying them for 30 years of electricity in advance. It's exactly the same thing that you're doing with the power purchase agreement. You're just buying the power that system produces. So if the system doesn't work, your PG&E bills will go back up, but that's the status quo. I mean, that's where you are today. If you own the system and it didn't work for whatever reason, you'd be paying twice for electricity. Your PG&E bill would go back up, and you're continuing to pay for this thing that you own or are paying off that isn't working.
So almost like renting versus owning in a sense?
It's better than renting versus owning because you're not, if you, I don't know, I have to make up all these analogies in my head and I'm going to get myself into trouble. So whether you own or rent, if you have a leak in your house, you have to pay for it, right? Your land, not necessarily the if you cause whatever,
But if
I
you're
told you
renting it, the landlord fixes it. I don't necessarily pay. Okay.
Yeah.
And then what about like changes and updates to the system as things modernize and change? That's automatically done, or
No, so with these power purchase agreements, I mean, at least the ones that I'm insisting on, right, through my RFPs, is there's a performance guarantee also. So what you're having the PPA providers, they'll tell you, here's how much we're expecting the system to produce. If it produces less than that, the threshold may be 90%, right? Below that, they'll compensate you for the difference between what you would pay them and what PG&E's current rates are. So there's some insurance there. That's all.
I had a question when you started to and saying that we're now just confined to solar because PG&E changed regulations. Did they change regulations for everyone or for schools? I mean, or
Yeah. So on the the NEM 2 grandfathering that was very advantageous to everyone who got their applications in. Is if you produce more than you consume, under NEM 2 you get to bank the full retail value, right? So that came into effect April 14th of last year. What was postponed for a little while is meter aggregation. So they hadn't decided what they were going to do with it, but they did say they made the decision, I think, in November. Is they said it's going to be treated exactly the way a standard net metering project is. In other words, if you exported electricity, instead of getting 30 cents or whatever that number is, 35 cents per kilowatt hour, you only get 3 or 5 cents. So when you're applying those 3 or 5 cents against these stranded meters and you're paying 20 or 25 cents on those meters, the 3 or 5 cents doesn't help really economically, right? Which under meter aggregation in the past, it helped because PG&E wasn't valuing the export. They were allowing you to do a kilowatt hour for kilowatt hour trade, and then the net kilowatt hours is what they would. I hate to do this to you, but this is PG&E's world, and this has unfortunately become mine. But that's it. The economics don't work, and it's primarily schools, farms, multifamily housing that benefited from meter aggregation and virtual net metering. Yeah.
right? Okay, thank you.
And so when I was considering a linear generator, 2 reasons it didn't work. One is because I was expecting that the production from that generator, which would be 2 million kilowatt hours per year, would offset all the meters on this campus and the primary school because it was contiguous, right, the properties. So with meter aggregation not being allowed, that was one reason it didn't work. The second is in order to use meter aggregation, you need a renewable fuel. Solar is renewable. And so I looked at renewable natural gas and sort of hydrogen was a possibility, etc. None of those exist at the moment affordably.
Changes so quickly, doesn't it? I mean, it wasn't that long ago that you were here.
Yeah.
I mean, it just shows you how quickly things move in that industry.
Yeah. Yes.
All right, I have a question. So how would the owner of solar installation make profit or money? So like what is their investment on their, or the return on their investment?
It's a tax play. So there's a 30% tax credit on solar. So the money behind these projects, it's all Wall Street money. And they typically deal in $100 million tranches. So they'll get a bunch of solar projects installed by what are called EPC contractors, engineering, procurement, construction contractors, bundle them, finance them. Yeah. So they get 50% of their money back in the first year, between the 30% tax credit and maybe about 20% in accelerated depreciation benefits in the first year. And they get all their money back in the first 6 years. And then the rest of it is just cash flow that comes in, for maintenance and so on and so forth. It's something that as a non-tax-paying entity, you don't get depreciation benefits, but you can, because of the Inflation Reduction Act, you can get the 30% indirectly. But still, I wouldn't recommend going down that path.
Thank you.
Sure. Yeah.
This is kind of higher level. So I'm looking at UK. Now, how does this fit into our facilities plan and our facilities work that we have to do as we move forward?
So going with this plan, because we're going to go, Paul will be writing our RFP based on a power purchase agreement, and we're not going to be owning this. There will not be any upfront cost for us in terms of we're not going to be spending money paying for equipment that is not ours. So that's going to be a cost savings for us. In our facilities plan, if you recall, this piece was not included in terms of, we knew that GoPal was going to be working with the district directly with this piece, the solar piece. And so the only thing that you're going to really see is the busing infrastructure, which is separate in a sense from the actual facilities plan, because that's based off of a grant, right? I mean, there'll be some costs that the district will incur, but majority of that busing infrastructure is going to be paid by the grant. The facilities projects that we have don't include this in it, because we were actually leaning towards, an RFP with a PPA agreement, so we wouldn't have to front any costs for purchasing equipment. And then to Gopal's point, the meter over at the M&O building, that transformers, actually, that would have been, not the meter, the transformer, that would have been work that we were supposed to upgrade. We were supposed to upgrade that transformer in order for us to move forward with this project, and that would have cost us about $80,000. And so because of the busing infrastructure, and they have to already, PG&E has to upgrade that transformer, that's what Gopal and I are working on, is hoping that that's going to take care of that transformer, because if that transformer is already going to be upgraded as part of the bus infrastructure, then we won't have to spend $80,000 to upgrade this. So we've kind of kept this a little separate from the overall facilities projects, just because we're hoping that if we go this route, then it will, with us not purchasing the equipment, it's not going to cost the district additional funds. Does that answer your question?
It does. So it sounds like right now it's kind of a separate. It's going to be like kind of a separate project on itself.
Yes, it is. It is. Next week, not next week, next month. Since we're on this topic. Next month, I have Gopal, Steve with Greystone. They're actually going to do a presentation on the busing infrastructure, and we'll talk a little bit more about this as well, because it all kind of ties in together.
Perfect.
Okay. Facilities is facilities. You can't, they're all interconnected in some way, shape, or form. So we do have a follow-up meeting next month that will tie in a little bit of this as well.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah,
Perfect.
just one little bit to add on that. Worst case, if they say you have to pay for the transformers part of the solar, that cost will also be included in the PPA. So you won't have to come up with any out-of-pocket.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now Mr. Cinto, kill the lights.
And Also, I just wanted to add, as part of my work with Gold on the energy conservation, because it's more than just solar, right? Because it's not just about producing more energy, but it's also about conserving energy. So those spikes that you see there, that's something that I'll be working with Gold on is, okay, how do we work on also conserving energy so that way we're not just looking at producing, but also the energy conservation is going to be a big piece to this project. So that's also in the works.
Okay, that's great.
Well, I was going to say that to Jeannie, like the elementary school, I think that a lot of that was on replacing things that are so old, like the lights and the single pane windows. So there's some of that project with facilities, which I think is conservation. And then I'm also thinking, Carolyn, this could be a good opportunity for students to look at usage and at the high school area and maybe the other schools trickling down and good math problems.
No, I was definitely thinking about our environmental club and looking at the numbers and our usage, and we don't want to be using this much electricity either. So, just being aware of that and, making that known to the whole school.
Right, exactly.
And there will be, PGE is holding a webinar next week that I'll be attending, and they're going to be discussing, discussing more about this semi-annual gas and electric rates increase. And so I'll get some more specifics as to what the actual increase cost is. Right now, we're hearing about 15 to 20%. So that's something else that I'll be adding to the second interim budget.
She says with a smile. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Gopal. Nice to see you again. Appreciate all the information.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to the consent agenda, which is item 9. The consent agenda contains routine items judged as appropriate to be acted upon in one motion. If a board member requests that an item be removed from the consent agenda, the item will be considered under discussion and action items. Is there anyone present who wishes to comment on this agenda item? Any online comments? Okay. Trustees, any questions about this agenda item or a request to pull anything? No? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Madrigal will conduct a roll call vote.
Trustee Mora? I'm sorry, Trustee Wolf?
Aye.
Trustee Kerr?
Aye.
Trustee Mora?
It's a trick question. Aye.
Trustee Mora?
You have to answer.
You have to.
I thought I did. I said aye. Sorry.
Trustee Simon? Aye. President Pelosi?
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, item 10 is communications. We'll start with the superintendent's report, please. Mr. Aurelio.
Good evening, everyone. So tonight's report's a little bit different than my typical report. I am going to just give a brief update, sort of mid-year review on the district priorities and goals. So we're going to move ahead to goal 1, which is increased achievement for all. I listed a few bullets. I'm not going to speak to each one. People can read those, but I really wanted to highlight the work, really 2 in this category, the work that our schools are doing around professional learning communities. We're really excited about the work. The primary school, they're hopefully soon going to submit their application to be a model PLC, which is fantastic. And I know you've all experienced some of those meetings firsthand, and it's just some great work, and we're starting to see that momentum throughout the different schools, including the high school, and they're working towards developing their true PLCs as well. The other, which is a plug for next week's board study session, which is Building Thinking Classrooms. Now, this isn't currently a district initiative a mandate. It is something we're doing sort of organically with our teachers, but we're really excited to see how many of our teachers are really taken to these instructional strategies, and you all will get to experience it firsthand next week with students. So really excited for that session coming up. Next slide, please. For embracing racial diversity and equity inclusion, for this one, I'm actually going to highlight PLCs again, because one of the things I've been learning in my journey with professional learning communities from the administrative side, the district side, is that if you're doing PLCs well, equity is embedded in that work inherently. You are looking at your students in the data, you're disaggregating that data, and you're really making plans and adjustments for each individual student. And that really is how we're going to be addressing sort of the strength of equity work. And it's something that our schools are starting to do really well. And so it's very exciting with this work. Next slide. So expanding parent and community engagement, the one I'd like to highlight here is really our communications tools. We were able to implement a new system this year, which is Parent Square. Over to my left here, Ms. Erica Madrigal holds probably 95% of that lift, bringing that on board, and her and Michelle Hopp did a great job of getting that implemented within our district. You all receive Parent Square messages from the community, from the parents' perspective, and I feel like it's been a fairly seamless process to get that. And we're really excited about the next set of features. I learned something about a super post that's going to be coming out soon, which is a post that includes a lot of different links and things like that. So our school site staffs were trained on that yesterday. Next slide. Supporting physical and social emotional well-being for all sites. I'm really excited about the work our school sites are doing around this. So we did a review of California Healthy Kids survey. That's an annual survey. We always bring that to the board. We looked at within the Student Equity and Belonging Committee as well. We dove into that data. And our school sites actually administered a different survey, the Kelvin survey, that they're now looking at, which was a during the school year survey, because since this is just a one-shot deal that's done once a year, we really wanted to see throughout the year what our students are saying and doing about belonging at a school site, their social emotional well-being. So really excited to see our schools and the work they do related to the Kelvin survey. We'd like to bring some of that data as well to some of the committees. Last one here. What can I say about our new CBO? She is working, as we know, 150, 200% to get us in line and making sure we are meeting all the deadlines we need to meet. She is working extremely hard when it comes to maintenance and facilities, and something that should be commended, the amount of work that she has put in. And that's something that as a priority for our district, both the facilities, but also the financial aspect of our district, and something that we're constantly looking at. Most recently, I was able to join her as well as Mr. Heller. We're doing the budget roadshows, where we go to each school site. The first one was this past week on Monday with the elementary school, and we have the next 3 scheduled for each of the sites, where we speak to the first interim budget and answer any questions the staff has about just the future outlook of our budget. So it's fantastic to see that work and the transparency that we're seeing with our employees. And that is the update. It is a jam-packed January, as you can see, lots of different committee meetings coming up before the next time we're together in a regular board meeting, which is at the end of February. I believe the 22nd is our next regular board meeting, but you can see them listed there. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustees, any questions or clarifying?
I just had one question on the, I guess, goal 4, so the Healthy Kids survey. Are all grades taking this additional survey?
The Kelvin, I'm actually going to look back for the grade levels. No, the Kelvin. Actually, Veronica, do you know which grades?
All grades?
No.
Sorry, we have added a mid-year survey.
Yes, the Kelvin.
I don't know what it's called, but what grades are included, or if it's easier, which grades are not?
And you guys can help. So we went ahead and gave it to, at the elementary, we did just the 4th and 5th, and we went back and did the 3rd grade. Yes, we went back and did 3rd grade, and then all of the middle school and all of the high school. So, did I miss one?
Nope. Thank you.
And then I'm just curious for primary, is it because it's a written survey, or is there an alternative where it's communicating, or just curious?
Yeah. So it was part of a grant, and so our three of the schools are participating. Actually, two of our schools are participating, both the elementary and the high school, and then the middle school. We wanted to make sure they took it, but it has to do because it is online, and so for the students, and it is meant to be actually for 4th through the 12th grade. So we made an adjustment so we could get 3rd grade. So it was created for those upper grade levels, and it has to do because of trying to make sure that the students can answer those questions correctly. I'm not sure if Rebecca's doing.
I guess, regardless of this, is there a need to do it, not this survey, even if it's some other type of taking the pulse of the kids at the primary school, is all I'm wondering. I don't want to be missing out on the segment that's rolling into the 3rd and 4th grade. That's all I'm thinking.
And I could ask Rebecca for that, but in my opinion, when we looked at this, we were looking at the California Healthy Kids Survey, making sure we had baseline. So knowing that we give those to that 5th, 7th, and 9th grade, trying to have comparable data. I know that at the TK2 or the K2, also being a mama of one, having the SEL lesson plans happening, and I know that they do checks, but officially, I don't know if there's any
just
surveys
curious.
that Rebecca does for the students. So I'm gonna let her speak to that. I know she likes data.
It doesn't have to be data, but just curious how we know.
Thank you, Rebecca, for coming up.
So I apologize that I don't know the acronym. We just talked about it at our MTSS team meeting on Wednesday, but it is a screener that the teachers do for each student, and it measures and it kind of color codes them. And anxiety, depression, hyperactivity, focus issues. So SEL screener.
Okay.
Yes.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Trustees, anything else? Mr. Aurelio, I noticed that the Olay van was out there today. Will we, and just refresh my memory, will the board receive a report on like how that is, how it's utilized, how much it's utilized?
We can get a report to the board.
Yeah, it just would be, maybe it's a
The
Friday
raw
memo.
raw numbers of
Just to
students
see,
served.
like, every time it's here, how many students are utilizing it, and do kids know, and just those basics, because it's an amazing service, and
Correct.
we want to make sure it's worth everybody's time and effort when it comes.
I feel like when we talked about this before, we were talking about all the services that come in, because there's a dental
so that's why I'm
van.
thinking there's a report that's probably going to come,
Right.
like a wellness
So
report.
not just,
Yes,
Right,
not
we do
just-
we do an annual wellness report.
Yes, so maybe that's
Yeah.
the right place for it.
Okay.
That's fine. I just wanted to clarify and refresh.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, anything else? Carolyn, anything? Okay. All right, we'll move on to 10B, which is the St. Helena Teachers Association report to the board. Okay, here comes. Oh, it's bothering you? Okay.
Gotta make sure signs are good.
Hello, Mr.
Good
Usador.
evening, trustees.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. I ran over from soccer, so hence why the amazing outfit. I just wanted to say congratulations to the winners of the classified. I was one of the evaluators, and it was just amazing looking at all the different applications and how strong it is. And you just have to walk around on our campuses and look how beautiful it is. Having one of the benefits of coaching is you get to see a lot of other school sites, and that gives you some perspective. And our school sites are there's just no comparison to the other places that we go to. And so that really, it reflects on the kids, it reflects on the teachers, and it really just makes our job easier. And all that machinery that happens kind of behind the scenes that students don't see, it just really helps. So I just want to say thanks to both the winners and just all of the classified. Other than that, I don't really have anything on our agenda. I just hope we have a nice second semester here at the high school, and so far, so far so good. So yeah, thank you. Unless anybody has a question.
I do not at this point, trustees.
How's the game going?
I just got an update. Not so good. We're playing a perennial, very, very good team. So it's 3-0 right now. Okay.
Go
It's
Saints.
not on YouTube. I just checked because I think we had the time wrong, so it recorded a practice. So earlier today. So anyways. So
Well, thank you for being here.
no
Appreciate
problem.
it.
Appreciate
Okay.
it. All right. Thank you.
Okay, item 10C. No, excuse me. Wait, did I lose my place here? I'm on 10C. Thank you. The CSCA report to the board, but do we have a written report or nothing? Okay. Okay. 11, we're going to move on to student learning and achievement. 11A is the presentation of the 2023-24 St. Helena Elementary School Site Strategic Plan. Dr. Emery, hello.
Hello, good evening, Madam President, esteemed trustees, Mr. Aurelio, and Executive Board, and everybody else. Good evening. Thank you very much for allowing me a few moments here to boast about my school a little bit. So I'm here to share our site plan, and what you will see is here's the content. We'll start with the process, which is super important. We'll go through our 4 goals in our site plan and summarize with some questions and answers if you have any by the time we're done. Okay, so process, super important. I'm sure you recognize the template that all of our schools are using. But the process is very, very important in focusing our work and in ensuring that everyone involved is aware and feels a part of our process, right? So there's purpose, there's success criteria, and of course I should have brought it over because it's very far away from me right now. But I just want to make sure that we understand that it does take a while. There's a lot of going to our site staff, classified employee meetings, school site council. We go back and forth, go back to the site staff, talk about a lot of different issues, and as you look at that, it's all about engaging everyone in the process, right? Very important that everyone involved, all of our stakeholders, understand we are one system, this whole district, and so our site goals are very much aligned, as you will see and have seen, with the LCAP, right, our district goals. In fact, they follow exactly as our LCAP dictates. Teacher clarity is a focus for us with our PLCs, with all that process about bringing teachers together and ensuring that everyone agrees. So this collective knowledge building that is happening at our site, very, very important that everyone agrees and understands what is meant to be learned. And then that guides their teaching, their instruction. They get to learn from each other, and then they get to use data to find out how successful their endeavors are and adjust and go back and forth. So teacher clarity is obviously something that is continual throughout in every subject area. Very, very important. It is elevating our practice as a system, as a school, and elevating the accountability among colleagues, among teachers. Reflecting about, and so here's where the data comes in. Let's take a really good look. Use evidence to figure out what's working and where we can focus our efforts for continual improvement. That's all part of our process in establishing this, in creating our site plan. And then, as you also saw in a site plan, with every goal, there are actions meant to ensure that we're moving towards those goals. So that's what I'm going to highlight for you today. So goal number 1. Number 1 is, we are, after all, a school. So it is all about academic growth. Our goal is to increase student achievement, right? To ensure that our students are always improving. It is evidence-based, so we do use you'll see the California standardized testing systems to gather some information. We also have our local assessments that we measure progress for students in every grade level twice a year. And then we do the standardized assessments at the end of the year. We use all that information to figure out who's doing great and where we might have some common areas to work towards improvement. So you can see right there, if our goal is for every student to improve academically, here are some actions that I wanted to highlight. And the very first one is the best one. It is all about the best first instruction. So that's what happens in the general ed classroom every single day. So what our teachers do it has to start with a group. It has to start with, in my case, in our elementary school, 4 teachers getting together, discussing what it is that has to be taught and learned. What will it look like when it is mastered, or when our students become proficient in whatever subject or area or unit or lesson that our teachers are working on? And then what will they do when that doesn't happen? For who? So best first instruction is your 10 minutes for every lesson, the introduction of the teacher, how the teacher is introducing the new unit, the new concept. And that, again, all starts from that PLC process of planning together and establishing our best practices. From there, teachers, as you can see in that picture, I put a picture of one of our teachers pulling a small group, while other students might be doing work that is maybe in a group, in a group of this along the same lesson. Teachers very often are rotating students through, while some students are doing independent work at their level, because we're blessed to have a lot of programs that keep our students working at different levels, whether it's in reading or in math, while teachers are doing this. And then there's projects that students are working on together, and then of course that small group instruction that every single grade level classroom teacher conducts. Another action that I wanted to highlight there was our focus on English learners. That is very important, and that one of the ways that we have done that is doing these refresher kind of staff meetings where we talk about where all of our resources can be found, what are some of the best practices that work, having teachers have discussions among each other and talk about scenarios about when that's working and when that's not, and other things that, again, they can learn from each other, best practices. So we're very proud of how we've, of all the accomplishments that we've had. Our English learners are doing very well. They get independent, dedicated time for English language learning, and then they also get what's called integrated ELD, which means while a teacher is teaching science or reading or math, teachers are making sure to front load vocabulary, teachers are making sure that there's visuals, teachers are making sure that there's certain pairing of students that is going to complement and support that language learning need. So we're having a lot of success with that. And another one of our actions, small group instruction, as I mentioned, there's a picture of what that might look like. Again, that's for all students as on a needs basis, but across the board in all content areas. And the final one is something that is new this year. We did not do this last year, but something that we're very glad that our third grade teachers took on this year was that structured literacy instruction. We assessed, our teachers evaluated screened every single one of the third grade students, identified where their gaps were when it came to phonemic awareness and phonics, and put them into leveled groups and dedicated 20 minutes every single day for the first half of the year, basically, to covering those gaps and making sure that our students had everything they needed to become the fluent readers that we need them to be. So it was so successful that we did it for the first half of the year. They don't need to do it anymore. So our students all moved through the scope and sequence that we all went to training for that over the summer, and that was super successful. So that's one of our major actions and definitely a plus. So that's goal 1 for academic growth. Okay, so goal 2 is really all about equity. This goal is meant for both staff and students, and it's really about raising awareness. Raising awareness and building a school climate that students and our employees feel included, feel accepted, in order for everyone to be able to grow to their potential and be open to all the academic learning that we have to see. You will see a theme that none of these goals, none of the 4 goals are really in isolation. They actually are all very integrated, and they all support, especially goal 1. They will, without one or the other, is going to be very difficult to achieve goal 1. So, equity as far as the need and how we figure out what our need is, data-wise, where we see a huge need is in that gap between our 2 largest student groups, right? Our white students and Hispanic students. And the data shows that throughout our district, and it definitely does at our particular site. So some actions to address that include the communication and awareness, staff development, basically. So we have been reading a book. We have been having discussions about what might be some things that adults inadvertently do that might turn off certain students and maybe shut down some learning. And so we need to have those discussions. Little bit of a touchy subject sometimes, and all the adults have to be a little bit vulnerable and trusting to be able to have these discussions, because these are many times biases that we don't even recognize that we have and carry into our classrooms and throughout our schools. So those conversations, those kinds of experiences are very important for the adults in the site to be having and working towards always improving, recognizing what they are and figuring out how to address that. We're doing that. We're also doing it for our students. So an example of that would be our student council going to every classroom and asking all of our students, how do you celebrate the end of a calendar year, or any kind of winter holidays? And they took tallies, and then they worked on coming to putting together presentations for the student body at the morning rallies on different ways to set different people might celebrate winter holidays. And that was really successful, but the whole purpose for that was to ensure to build up that climate of acceptance and not wanting to leave anybody out, basically. So our students were really interested to find out, yes, the majority of our students celebrated Christmas. Many of them celebrated it in a very commercial way, and many of them in a religious way, and many of them in combination. But there was also a big group of students celebrating Hanukkah, a smaller group of students celebrating different holidays and things like that. So it was interesting for them to discover the numbers and then share that information with our student body. So again, for equity, it's all about learning to talk about our differences and being very conscious about how we include people and accept everyone at our site. So, goal 3 is about engagement. And for this goal, it really is focused on our building student voice and parent involvement. So those 2 stakeholder groups are very important for this engagement. We realize that higher engagement is going to lead to higher achievement for our students. As I mentioned, all of these goals 2, 3, and 4 really do support goal 1. If we can get those in line, goal 1's going to shoot up. And so in order to do that, some of the actions that I highlighted here are our communication. You've heard a little bit about Parent Square. You've heard about how that has kind of proliferated our community. So we're definitely trying to do that. We're trying to build up we continue to try to build up our Hispanic parent engagement. And so, for example, we're having another one of our Zoom evening meetings in Spanish next week. We're already planning for our Dia del Niño, which is coming up in April. Our Fiesta de Octubre was a big success. I have a picture there about the altars for the Dia de los Muertos. So things that have to do with a lot of cultural acceptance, cultural acknowledgement and recognition. Those are things that we are trying to highlight to make sure that our parents, our Hispanic parents, are feeling welcomed and invited. Our coffees are going very well. Rebecca and I have principal coffees. We're still trying to get more of our Hispanic parents to show up, but I think every time that we've had them, that is increasing. So another action for that would be, our student leadership. I did highlight that as an action for our engagement, and that is meant to build student leadership, to build student voice. Again, students make coming together to plan for the morning announcements. They give the morning announcements and spirit weeks and things like that to have students feel more a part of our school and that they have voice. So that's goal 3. And then finally, our goal 4 is around social emotional well-being. Our main stakeholder groups here would be our student body, of course, and then also all of our employees, all the adults that work to support student learning. And for this one, how we identify need, obviously, is through research. Research clearly states that students and adults have to be ready to take on learning, to do the work that the adults at the school have to do. They also have to feel safe. They have to feel happy. They have to feel welcomed. And so once again, a goal that supports, that has to be in place before goal number 1 can be realized. So Mr. Aurelio was talking to you about the Kelvin survey, because before that, the only information that we really had came from the California Healthy Kids survey, and that was given only to 5th graders and only once a year. So now with the Kelvin survey, we just looked at our first round of information and data from that, and that is student survey plus also an employee survey. So we're able to see both groups and see how they're doing, identify some goals, and move forward from there. The good thing about this is all 3 of our grades are surveyed, and then also we're going to do it again, I believe in April or maybe late March. So it's more than once, and it's everybody. We also have a little bit more control over the questions. So I think Veronica mentioned that we tweaked the 3rd grade one a little bit. It really was a 4th grade survey, the 4th and 5th grade survey. We just cut the questions. We selected 11 questions as opposed to, I think there were 23. So let me see. Oh, and also another thing that we added this year that we weren't doing last year is the positive character traits. Something that we are bringing to our students and explaining that positive character traits are something that not only do we have to identify, but we have to practice. And sometimes it's so simple, but maybe students don't realize how simple it is to show kindness. It takes a smile. You don't have to buy anything. You don't have to carry anything with you. So when we focus on a character trait, the picture that I selected for this goal is the compassion board. You can see the whole word, but it was compassion. But we had compassion in, I think it was September, and then in October we did citizenship. So we talked about how building up that character trait means it's a person that is looking out to make sure that they leave a place better than it was when they got there. So whether it's their classroom or whether it's the library or whether it's their home or the grocery store, how are they adding value to that situation? Are they greeting people? Are they maybe picking up a piece of trash? Are they putting things back in a certain way that makes it easy for the next person that's coming to use that table or use that classroom? Things like that. So building, again, that character trait, we're putting that in with our social emotional learning. Our teachers do check-ins. They could be mini lessons or a little classroom meeting every single day that has to do, we have a whole scope and sequence of items to focus on throughout the year. And that just kind of helps us all recognize all the little things that we can do to build our character and to identify our feelings and cope. So that is our goal 4, social emotional well-being. So with that, I just bring you right back to the process, because this is a cycle and it will continue to evolve. The data that I was talking to you about was just released. And so when you all saw the site plan at first, it still had last year's data. It does not anymore. It has this year's data now. But luckily, I mean, it pretty much identified all the same goals that we wanted, and it all worked out. But once again, it's a process, and it has to involve everybody. And so I just get to come here and talk to you about it and basically boast about how happy we are with what we did get into that data. So SHUSD is doing really well. We're very, very excited about our scores, and even our surveys, our recent surveys. We walked around and looked at them yesterday, actually, at the faculty meeting, and noted that there's a lot of favorable responses in student and teacher surveys, and so that was very encouraging, and we were able to identify a couple things to work on.
That's great. Thank you, Dr. Emery.
Okay.
Is there any public comment on this agenda item? No? Trustees, questions, clarifications?
Dr. Emery, I just wanted to say that my ears perked up when you shared the 3rd grade assessment or screening for phonics, and then having that continued work in 3rd grade. I really appreciate that. You know, 3rd grade, as you know very well, is still a time where children are learning to read. Sometimes we make the mistake that we think that they're reading to learn in 3rd grade, and that's where it's changing. And so I really appreciate the focus on phonics still in 3rd grade with the teachers. Thank you.
Thanks. That was a great addition this year.
Yeah, that's great. I actually wrote it down too in my book because I thought it piqued my interest. And so was that something that came out of PLC work, or was that something that, as a leader of the site, that you said, why don't we try this?
We actually joined the primary school over the summer.
Okay.
I went with two of our 4 3rd grade teachers were able to go. It was over the summer, so it wasn't all of us, but we were already talking about maybe next time to take the other 2 teachers, because the training was very good. And even it was so good that those 2 teachers, myself and Dana Tucker, also went, our reading specialist. And with that training, we came back and we convinced the other 2 teachers, and we found a very, very comprehensive curriculum to use, and we were able to do it. And one of the things that I was just telling, I think, Mr. Heller yesterday, was the success that teachers saw in this short period of time, that first half year. Was very, very exciting and encouraging. And it was, it's data driven, because it was screening, it was evidence, it wasn't feelings, and it was very successful. And so we're very confident our 3rd graders are going to do great this year.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thanks you.
Trustees?
I do. First, I want to compliment you on your enthusiasm and your pride in your school. I love that. I love that you wear green. When you come do the presentation, you've got spirit. I have kind of a question about Healthy Kids Survey, and this is kind of in general. When schools administer that, is there a formula for when? So does every school in California make sure it's Monday at 2 o'clock? Or, I mean, because I'm sure time of day, time of week, time of year has a lot to do with it. Is that something you kind of...
Close. Yes, not exact. The California Healthy Kids surveys typically, and Veronica, you can correct me on this, but I think it's in the spring for the most part. Usually it's almost to the end of the year, but not to the end of the year where kids are not going to care and they're done with it. So it is sometimes usually March, March or April. And so California does give like a window, I believe. And then they only do 5th grade, and I think they do 7th grade or something like that. So that is that way. As far as the Kelvin survey, we selected our window, and we asked teachers to do it before lunchtime, and you know, those kinds of things. We did learn some things from the Kelvin when it was the first time that we gave it. So the answers, it's yes, no. And we were like, we've never seen a survey like that before. We actually didn't see it till we gave it. So one of the conversations when looking at that data yesterday was, and this is true of looking at data anytime, it is a snapshot, a moment in time. It is not the end all be all. And so we're going to give it again. And it's not until you get to see patterns that you really should worry or celebrate tremendously, right? But so it's just a snapshot. So it wasn't given perfectly. We'll do better next time when we give it in the spring.
No, I can imagine even just time of day versus time of week. You know, how you might be having a great day on Monday, but Thursday you're not. You know, so I'm sure it's
and the other piece when it comes to those surveys is how well students are understanding what's being asked. So that's always a variable, right? And so we are, as you all know, we've seen this acknowledgement of being sad, and for us that's alarming. However, it's important to recognize and realize that we have probably for the last 3-4 years explicitly on purpose been teaching kids how to identify feelings and that feelings are okay. So so if we see an uptick in kids saying, yes, I'm sad, well, everyone's sad at some time, and we tell them that all the time, and it's okay to be sad. We tell them that all the time. So it's not a big deal for them to say, yeah, I feel sad sometimes. You know, so we have to kind of realize what we're creating also, and our students do know a lot about feelings, a lot more than when I was in the classroom. We did not spend a lot of time talking about those things.
Oh, thank you. No, it's great enthusiasm. I love it.
I agree. So thank you very much. Sure. Any other, make sure everybody has an opportunity? Okay. Thank you again, Dr. Emery.
Great, thank you.
Go Dragons. Okay, now we're going to move on to 11B, which is the presentation of the California dashboard. Please, Mrs. Miranda. Oh. Okay.
Talk about the presentation. So I am looking at you. You have a lot of information that came your way. I'm going to do my very, very best to be able to meet the objective on providing you an overview of the dashboard. So we're going to go ahead and start. Okay. I do want to say that, you know, one of the things that happens, so first of all, Feliz Año Nuevo, Happy New Year. It feels a little old, but it's only been 11 days. And I think 2024 is going to be a great year as we continue to, thank you, yes. I did tell them that I sometimes walk away from the microphone as we continue. So my objective today, there's a lot of information. So being in the education system for over 20 years, I have seen different types of accountability come your way. And if you've been parents probably as long as I have been teaching as well, we've been doing this together. And so California has done this one number, you know, that tells us where we're at. We've done the, you know, a percentage. We want everybody to get here. So California has developed an accountability system that provides lots and lots of layers. So I do have a challenge to provide you an overview and give you some information to understand what the dashboard is, know how to ask those questions, but more than anything, what do we do with this and where, you know, where does it come from? So today I'm going to provide you an overview of the status. The dashboard is a status and change. That is what we're looking at. And it's a measure of ourselves, not against another school, which I will explain. It's about how we're doing. How did we do? And did we move? Did we go up or down, depending on what we're looking at? We'll be looking at our school district and at our 4 schools. I also want you to understand where the source of the data is coming from. and also share some reflections and next steps. Everything is connected. Today you saw Dr. Emery talk about her school. So we'll be looking at her school to say, did her actions on her plan last year make a difference? And so we're seeing some places there. And if they didn't with some of the others, what is it? Where should we be focusing on? The professional learning communities is an opportunity for our schools to focus on the individual students. What you'll see today is the overview, but I'll be able to answer those questions. Next. So we'll begin, and it's small. So what I've done is I usually like to drive the dashboard, but as I continue, it's like I'm going to give you some status pictures there, and I gave you paper copies, and I do have this fancy pointer that does fade. I was trying to get there, so I won't. This is why I needed to stand here. I'll point over here. So we'll be looking at 6 state measures, and as you look at these were developed because they are factors. This is what impacts success and at one point. So academic performance, that is our English language arts and math scores that we give our students. And I will explain also what group of students we gave that to. We'll be looking at chronic absenteeism. If they come to school, they learn. If they don't, it's difficult, so we need to keep an eye on that. College and career readiness, that's something that was added that's only for our high school. We look at our high school students, our seniors for that. English learner progress, that is for anybody who's learning English, our K-12 students. How are they doing in gaining a level? High school graduation rate, once again, our seniors, and suspension rate is for all of our students. And I'm going to go back and say chronic absenteeism is only measured for K-8. Now you were going to ask me the question, why not the high school? Their periods, but so is the middle school, but it's K-8 that measures chronic absenteeism. So for 5 of these measures, you're going to see this little dashboard. So I'm going to say this little needle, and they're measured in colors, red through blue, which correlate to the very low, low, medium, high, and very high. And under the, I'm going to say the college and career, if I can read that right, I'm trying to remember what that is. College and career readiness, you're only going to get the status where we're at. Okay, next slide. The additional indicators that have been included in the dashboard are these 5. They talk about basic conditions. So where are we assigning our teachers? Do we have clean buildings? Are we implementing the standards? Have we bought the latest curriculum? Our school climate survey, our parent involvement, and access to courses. When you see this measure, it's simply given met, and not met for 2 more years. This is really just saying, did we as a school district provide a report to the board where we provided you a narrative of how we're implementing these areas or how we're addressing these needs? This is not an indicator of like, how well are we doing? It's really about, did we report it out? Do we have clean buildings? How did our facility inspection tool, where are we on those areas? So that's a different report, but here on the dashboard, it basically says, we as a school district completed it. I brought it to the school board. We looked at our areas and we're working on those. But I'm very confident in being part of that we are in a good place. We just not met, we're also making progress in those areas. Okay, next. So where does the data come from? So like I mentioned, there's 6 indicators. So our academics, like I mentioned, is our CAS score. CAS scores that happen in the spring, and that's 3rd through 8th grade and 11th graders. So that's who that data is for. Chronic absenteeism is what we report in our student information system, which is ARIES, and that's through CalPADS. So we complete a report at the end of the year and we upload it. The same thing with suspension. And you've already had an opportunity to talk about this data in committees, and we've brought it to you as well. And that's also gone, it is also sitting in ARIES. And one of the things we discovered even last month when Mr. Ryan was up here presenting is, we need to make sure that our data is clean. So because when it's reported, we want to make sure that it's accurate, right? So an incident counting, only once is not twice. So just keeping an eye, and we're already looking at how we fix that. The graduation data also comes from CalPADS. Our English learner, that comes from the English Language Proficiency Assessment of California. So after I give you the big, I'm going to use an acronym. Okay, so the LPAC. And then the college and career, that was added over the years because, we were just measuring if kids made it, if the kids went off to college, are they college and career ready? The state wanted to look at different factors for measuring college and career. It's still not perfect. Mr. Cinto and I had a conversation yesterday. Each one of these, the way we measure the college and career is measured in different ways. So we look at our students in a CTE pathway. Did they meet the Smarter Balance assessment? Remember, it's only for 11th graders. Are they taking college credit courses? Are they in an AP class? Did they meet the UC requirement? Did they do the state seal of biliteracy? But some of these indicators have a plus. They'll say the students need this and this. So it's a little complicated on how that is resolved, and I will let you know how we're doing as a district or as a high school. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to work on giving you a helicopter view of the dashboard, and I was choosing what I gave you. I actually gave you more, tried to be that teacher. I gave you more towards the end, but I'm going to focus on this. So let's go ahead and begin. Go ahead, Ms. Erica. All right, so St. Helena, when we look at our dashboard, so as soon as you pop onto the dashboard, California dashboard, you type in St. Helena Unified, and this is what comes up. So you see right away, you see some blue. Those are the local indicators that we complete that are all blue that says we've met those. And then your eyes might go to the college and career, so I'm going to point here. You know, remember I said it was just a status. So it's about 68% of our students met this indicator. And then you see the colors here that we talked about, the dashboard. So your eyes might go to this orange. So the question is, why are we here at orange? So in our district, we have chronic absenteeism sitting at the low level or the orange. That's what they're calling it. Suspension rate. We look at our English learner progress, and we want to celebrate this. We're sitting in the blue. We also want to know what did we do there and how can we keep us there. Graduation rate, that's only for our high school. And then we look at English language arts as a district, sitting in the green, and math, we're sitting in the yellow. So I'm going to spend the next few slides explaining what that means for our district. So I'm going to stay here for just a little bit to explain. Under chronic absenteeism, the question is, what does that mean? So as a district, we have an 11% chronic absenteeism rate. And so we landed in that, and I'm struggling with glasses and no glasses, so you're all blurry, but I can see my slides here. You know how that is. There was an increase. Now in this one, it's not about increasing, right? Most of them, we want to decrease the percentage of absenteeism. So we have students, K through 8th, 11% of our students were chronically absent last year. I want to make a note here that this is for any absence, whether it's excused or not excused. When perhaps parents go on vacation, everything counts in this area. The other conversation I had with is it Mr. Jesse, Mr. Aurelio from our newspaper, we were talking to him about this. And, as a parent, these couple of years, we've been very, very careful and cautious of also not sending our kids sick if there's a cough. I mean, very different than when I sent my first set of kids. I told them unless they were throwing up or like, you are going to school. They had perfect attendance. We are going. With my little one, it's a little different. We wear masks, we're careful. And so this is showing up in that indicator. And once again, it's a 1 point, but we also want to monitor that. We looked at our suspension rate, and we see, and you're going to see some school, one is sitting in the red or subgroup sitting in the red. We are blessed to be a small district where we can make amazing things happen. But when we have 1,000 students, 1 or 2 students can swing us very easily. And so that's what you'll see. So great problem to keep, because we can kind of move the needle the right direction. But also if things happen, if there's an incident and we have to discipline our students. If that incident happens, then we have to suspend, because that's what we know we have to do. That's what it calls for. And so we'll be able to spend some time in that. And then I'm going to leave the other indicators as we continue to move. All right, next slide, please. So I'm going to, what I've done is I just grabbed the snapshots from the schools to give you just the dashboard of those schools and kind of let you know how we got to this level. So the primary, of course, is an interesting one because they're a TK2 school. They have second graders, but they have a dashboard. And so why is that? So the state, in his wisdom, went ahead and looked at the third graders to be able to give them a report for the English language arts and the mathematics. So they're being reported on how did those third graders do, and gave the credit actually in 2 places, both to the primary and to the elementary. So with our primary school, we when I looked at, and I put a little note here, so what is it that they're measuring? Unlike percentages, what the state is doing is they're doing some fancy math. I'm going to call that. So I took my statistics. They're doing some fancy math, and they're looking at the distance from standard. So basically, they're looking at the average of students who are who are sitting. So basically, there is a, I'm going to say there's points that are given, as you know, for the CSTs, for the CASP. Ooh, my 1990s just came back. For the CASP. And so they look at the average of students to see where do they sit. And they place those students they place those students on a point to say, okay, the average of students that are not performing, how far are they from meeting standard? And that's the number that the state gives us. So at St. Helena Primary, and I'm going to use this one because it's a good one to look at. So for English language arts, we can see, well, you can't see it, but I have it. 18. So when we look at those third graders, the average student is sitting 18.9 points away from meeting the standard. And I know that's a lot of math, but I'm going to show you what these numbers mean. But basically, that's a good, if it's a plus, it's a good thing. So they're looking, we're trying to make sure that that number is narrowed over the year. So they'll do this math. So for mathematics, they're sitting at above 19 points above the average student. So anytime we see that, there's good progress. The reason they do that is because they want to be able to do a minute number and be able to make the effect show up. So for St. Helena, our third graders are performing above. Most of them are performing above. Now, if we look at the subgroups, there might be a little difference. But in this case, our elementary, our primary didn't break it up into subgroups. That's something that they did not do. Under the English learner progress, and I do want to highlight, so this is where you're going to start seeing this role as the years progress. If we continue to do this and focusing, I've noticed 74%, and this is all TK2 students who were English learners, 74% of those students made growth on the LPAC. Okay, the state says if you make 65%, you're in the blue. That's kind of what the measures. So we're at 74%. And then suspension, we didn't suspend our little guy. There was 0, so that's going to be sitting in the blue. Chronic absenteeism at the primary is sitting at 9.7%. But there was a decline from the year before. So and a decline is good in chronic absenteeism. So therefore, we were placed in the green. Okay? Next slide. All right. In the at the primary level, I'm going to start with the good news of the English learners. So when we look at our English learners, 76% of our English learners at the elementary level made growth. Healthy number. What is that saying? That's saying that both at the elementary, at the primary, there has been a continued focus to make sure that the students are practicing those strategies that Dr. Emery was talking about. It's not just happening in ELD in a specific time. There's conversation, there's growth. Now that happens when you're learning a language very early on. We'll talk about we stagnate. It's just the way that language acquisition is at the middle, at the high school, because it's a little harder, and academics get harder on that. Suspension rate is also sitting on 0. The year before they were at a 0.8, so they must have had one suspension the year before. But they're in the blue because there was growth there. The one that we looked at, the chronic absenteeism, we're seeing that in the red. Why? 16% of the students at the elementary school were absent. At least at chronic, over like those I want to say it's 20 days, they were chronically absent. That is an increase of 6.4% from the year before. So that increase threw them into the red. And so I know that those are conversations that Dr. Emery is having, with the teachers, with parents, to make sure that we keep our kids. Do we know why? I don't know if we know why they were being absent, but I can speak to that we were being cautious last year and not sending. And so this year, the monitoring of absent, we have parents are being notified. When the students are absent, parents are being notified. And I know there's meetings and conversations that are being held to make sure that if the kids are healthy enough, send them to school. But that's going to be something we'll continue to work on. Next slide, please. All right, then we move to RLS. Your first question might be, why is this one in the gray? We have English learners at RLS. Why are they sitting in the gray? So when the state gives us subgroups, they have to be over 30 students. And so there weren't 30 students, there were 27 students at RLS. And so therefore this indicator showed up. However, when I looked at the data, because I'm able to drill down, I can still tell you that 44% of our ELs at RLS made movement on the LPAC. So if I were to put him, and I wrote it down on another slide, on and give him a color, I believe it would have been orange. But the state is just keeping that, keeping their rule of only over 30. Under suspension, this is a conversation that has been ongoing as a district. The suspension rate is sitting at 9.1% at RLS, and I'm going to show you kind of what number do we need to kind of move us over on there. Chronic absenteeism is at 7.8%. Math, we are at 42.5 points below. There was a decline, which is why we're now in the orange. And then for English language arts, we're in the yellow, which is medium participation. And there was also a decline there. So that is data that the school can use through the PLC process to figure out what are the students who didn't meet standards last year, how are they doing now through progress monitoring. When we pull them into these groups and they have, I'm forgetting the term, access. Is it access? I got that right. When they have access and they group the students, being able to be very strategic and offering what the students need. So trying to get to that place where both the primary and the elementary are doing very, very focused and trying to understand what are the needs of the kids to be able to meet that gap. As students progress through our school system, the gap gets wider and it gets harder to trying to do that. But the first thing is trying to identify what is it? Is it because they can't read, they can't decode? Is it comprehension with mathematics? What pieces of that? So all of these systems that we have in place need to work together, and it'll take time. However, I feel like there's some acceleration happening, and I just have this hunch, especially in mathematics, with our schools and our teachers that are participating with building thinking classrooms. Just the fact you have students talking about math, you're going to see increase, I believe, also in our English learners and students that are learning academic language, and then math, just because of that process of being able to think and engage. That's just a hypothesis I have there. And then suspension. We looked at, why did we suspend? Why are we in the red? And so last year with RLS, like I said, there was an increase. And so when there's a increase in suspension, it puts you over to that color. All right. High school, please, next. So at the high school, we have this college and career indicator that is not part of the other schools. If you look up in here, chronic absenteeism doesn't appear here. It does exist, but it doesn't appear here, and we're still monitoring that. So 62% of our high school seniors showed up as college and career ready, according to one of those indicators that I'll spend more time in a bit. Under graduation, we're sitting in the yellow. 91%. We have a 91.3% graduation rate based on the formula that they use. There's lots of formulas for graduation. Are you looking at the 4-year cohort, at the 5-year cohort? Which one are you looking at? And we've been here, Mr. Cinto actually spoke. He knows, because of the school, he knows who those students are. He can tell you where they went. It's like, just keeping track where they are, is that they move. So just very, the ability to be able to track our students, sometimes we have no control over why that is happening. But I think the important thing is, are they dropping out, or they just moved? Did we not get did we not code it correctly? But I think here is just being able to look at our data to make sure that we're tagging those correctly so that they show up. And then English language arts and math, it's only our 11th graders. And we had this conversation on our deep dive. So in math, we are testing students at 11th grade that might not be taking that math course. There's still not an excuse, but we're testing things that might not be covered in that classroom. We're gonna continue to do our best to address that, but it's just that measure is not the strongest. English language arts, every student takes an English course, so we tend to do well there. However, once again, we have kids at different levels. We don't test in the class that they're in. We test with what that assessment is provided. English learner progress. So here for the high school, 61% of our English learners, which is, I'm going to say, for a high school, and I know we have a smaller number of ELs, but the fact that we're moving over 60% over in a band when they've been, long-term English learners is still very good progress. Really looking at, as a district, one of our goals as we look into moving this is if we have a student that entered our St. Helena schools, TK or kindergarten, by the time they leave our 5th grade, our elementary schools, we should have them reclassified. If we're doing what we need to do, it takes anywhere from 6 to 7 years to acquire a language. If that isn't happening, it's really about that individual, like why is it? And we have newcomers, so as a newcomer, you're not going to learn English overnight. We just want to be able to see that progress for that student. And then the suspension rate, that is something that also is being clearly monitored. Once again, you've got a school of 400, that 1-2 student can move us either way. All right, are we doing okay? All right, okay, good, next slide. So I'm going to give you the forest view. So I'm going to drop down to these 5x5s. Now I don't want you, I know your eyes might want to cross. What I want to focus you on, because I didn't pull one for every single school, because that would have been a 5x5x5x5. It would have been like 5 for every school. I don't want to keep you here all night. Love to be able to spend time with you. I am a data nerd, and I'm proud of that. So if we need to talk, I'd love to do that. So I'm going to show you on these slides with these 5x5s. Go ahead and click, Miss Erica. How we can use this as a school. And so I gave you, because I can't even read those numbers up there, but I'm going to point so that you can see kind of the status. So what do we do? So the first one that you're looking at is a chronic absenteeism. This is the 5x5, and this one is for our school district. And so if you see here, these are the levels. So these are the numbers that can help us to understand, okay, so how do we need to move? How did we land on here? So for example, I mentioned that St. Helena, that our elementary school was sitting at a 16%. So if you look at even the numbers here, so we landed in that status of a high need, or in the red, because it says any school between 10 to 20% of their students being chronically absent will be sitting in this area, will sit right here in this section right here. So how do we move us over? What do we need to do? What is the goal that our elementary school should have to be able to move us over? Really, we want to be in that green, in that blue. That's what we want to shoot for, and we can do that. So in order to be able to start moving into that green, we need to really look at reducing that rate from 16 to less than 10%. So if you look here on the side, and then you look at your chart, in order for our elementary, and I'm just giving you an example. So they're sitting here, right? So here, if we just maintain that, we're not going to get to the green. If we want to get to this green area here, we have to be sitting on this status right here. So our chronic absenteeism between 5 to 10%. Do you see how that works? So if we want to move into be able to capture a blue as a school, we need to have our chronic absenteeism be from 2.6 to 5%. Am I making sense? Okay. If we really want to get up here and stay, it's less than 2.5% of our students being absent. So that's a 97.5%, right? Which I think before the pandemic we were there. So really, it's about setting that goal to be able to hit these areas and having that decrease. Now, the schools, this chronic absenteeism, one of the things that a practice, and I know we have ARIES, is to be able to look at, at a monthly level, to be able to run those reports. I mean, that's just like a strategy. So this is like me thinking as a principal, like if I know that that's a concern in talking to our schools, like how do we do that? So being able to, the planning happens at the school site, at the district level. I don't have control, but I can definitely give guidance. So chronic absenteeism is something we need to look at. And I know Dr. Emery is doing that, is really looking at the students that are really, that are getting close to that 10, 20 day mark before they get there. And we can also look at patterns to be able to focus on making sure that those kids come to school. So that's an example of how you can use this. And all of our schools, have that, have this available. Go to the next one, please. Next slide. And the next one should be, so this one was the EL one, I think. What was it? Yeah, so. I know these aren't numbers. I put numbers on your sheets because the numbers were eaten up. So just an example of, so this is the EL. Once again, it's given to us by a district level. And remember when I talked to you, I think I said 65%, but I think it said 66. So we're hitting, so as a district, if we have a 65% higher, so basically every year we want to be able to move at least 65% of our EL students through a level. Now, what the state did recognize is there's only those four levels, they kind of broke the levels there's a little complication, but they actually gave us like six levels in the LPAC so that we could actually show movement. So on this one, once again, is being able, when we set our EL goals and we look at progress monitoring, being able to see, so how are we doing with students acquiring English? And this is one that I think as a district we continue to work, because sometimes it is hard to measure English language acquisition. How do we measure that? There's different ways that we could do that. And once again, it's just talking about understanding, for example, how's the test given? How does a test measure? And so I actually got I'm going to call it the blessing, to go through the LPAC. I hadn't done it in many years, and actually be able to see those 4 domains: reading, writing, listening, and speaking, see how they're tested. And there isn't anything wrong for our teachers and our principals to understand how that's measured so that we could practice. And I know we do it at the primary, because we're always having kids talk to the story, tell me the story, practice their reading, their writing, their comprehension. And so those are things that we can put in place, and then we can continue to make great progress on that. On this one, it doesn't show you our reclassification rate, but you've already seen that in previous, and so we continue to do well there. Go to the next one. And this one is just simply the graduation rate that affects the high school here, and it once again, to be in the blue, we have to be above 95%. You can see here there is one which is anywhere between 90 to 94, and it's really just showing, and these are blank because it's saying, we want to be able to make growth by 0.1%, by 5%, and so after that we run out, because you can't do more than 100%. So it's just showing that piece of it. Next slide, please. This is the suspension rate. So this is an interesting one. So what, where, if we want to be in the green, what does it mean? So as the state began to look at, and they based this on research, looking at across the state, what makes sense from previous patterns. So here we can see that to even qualify to be in the blue, we need to have a suspension rate of no more than 2%. Okay, so that just kind of lets you know here. If being on the green, they actually give us a threshold of 2.1 to 8%. So if we look at all students here, and we were looking at just making movement, and here this one is, I actually just pulled RLS because I know we were looking at this. So when they look at it as a school, and we're sitting here, I'm looking at the school status, but if I were to try to move our all students from red to orange, and I had a little conversation with Mr. Ryan about this. It's like, what do we need? What's the progress we need to show? So we need to significantly decline the percentage of students we're suspending. So sometimes we don't have control, but at least we can know what that means. If there's an incident, because there are some, when you understand how the data comes, sometimes people might look at that and do it different. We're not going to suspend just because of the data. We need to be able to follow discipline, but at least for us to understand why did we get these results, and be able to put things in place so that we're not having to suspend, and doing the best we can with that. And more than anything, educating that progressive discipline piece, for example, and also restorative practices to help educate our students. Next slide, please. All right, and this one right here is also, this one, like I said, it's not a straight percentage for the English language arts and the mathematics, but it still lets you know here on the side. So how did we end up? How did we end up with the color or the level that we're at? And so basically it becomes status. If I'm sitting at a negative or a decrease of 6, if the average of number of students are 6 points away from meeting standard, the only thing I'm going to be able to hit is yellow and green here. And I do have an example to show you how important it is to understand that we're measuring ourselves against ourselves, and also our progress and our growth, because it makes a difference for when you maybe look at another school. And I've been around friends and parents, especially because I'm in a new district, and it's like, my school's at a blue or in a green or orange, or even when principals would would compare. Even the schools, like we're not comparing school to school because where you started might be a little different. So let's click on to the next slide, please. And this is just the indicator for math. So just letting you know, if we needed to move, what does that mean? So under here, we want to be able to maintain or increase. And the increase, and we have some places we want to increase by 3 points. So it's not that it's not doable, but it's also understanding what does that mean. And so we're not going to go through it. I'm not going to pull. I could every student see what their raw score is. It's really about looking at the students who didn't meet standard, finding out why, and being able to support them. And really, we want to push them to make growth. And that's that progressive piece of it. And that's what PLC is helping us to be able to keep an eye. And we're not just closing our eyes and saying, okay, let's see how they did on the CASP. So progress monitoring is what's the key here. Next slide, please. All right, so you might ask, okay, Veronica put this in here and why? So I should have blocked out these two because really what I wanted you to see is I have 2 schools. And these 2 schools, one is sitting in the yellow and one is sitting in the green. So this school might be doing better. Like we talked, it is a measure against ourselves. I want you to see this. This is kind of where I focused. So St. Helena High School in mathematics is sitting 53 points below standard. So when we look at the average of 11th graders who took the math CASP, the average of them are 53 points below meeting standard. And that's hard because you don't know like what percentage, but that is. There's a comparable school, and when I looked up, I really looked at a school that was doing similar. So we have this school that's really 1 point. So their average of students is also 54 points. Okay. So here I have one school that's like, okay, but when I look at the color indicator, this is sitting in the yellow, this is sitting in the green. They look like they're doing better. Well, they're doing better because the year before they had a farther climb. So they were literally 90 or so points below. So their students improved to make it to that 54. So this green is rewarding them for that progress piece. And if we look here on their equity report, they still have subgroups that are sitting in the red and the orange and in the yellow. And if we look at our school here, we are in the same place, and we've got a couple of groups here, none in the red, a couple in the orange, and one in the green. And so really that was my intent, and being able to say, just being very, when parents are asking or I'm trying to compare, why is that school or green and blue, it could literally be that we are, as a school, our kids are doing better, but the progress that they made or the jump that they made or the increase was larger than ours. And so that's what's showing up on this dashboard is really that progress piece. And that was my point in bringing this to you. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to stop here. I'm just going to stop with what I just covered. Can I answer any questions up to this point?
Trustees, anything yet?
Okay.
I on that comparison of the 2 schools, is there any, is there, like, if the other school has, 500 11th graders and we have,
400
100 11th graders, I mean, does that not skew the data?
It would. Yes, because it would be harder.
Right.
Yeah, it would be harder for that. So it's just when
You just use that to just show the difference
just
of progress.
Progress, correct.
Okay.
Correct, because the progress is looks like we're the same average, but yet this one's yellow and this one's green.
Okay,
That was the only reason. All right. So we talked about college and career, and this is very, very tiny, but what I wanted to just point out is that the way that the college career indicator is calculated for school districts or for the high school is in a variety of ways. So as a district, we are sitting, they give it to us as a district, but really it's our high school, and we're all one. And I'm looking for it. So 62.6% of our seniors met or were college and career ready according to this indicator. And they did this in a variety of ways. Now, to give you perspective, that's 72 out of the 115 seniors from last year. So 72 out of 115, right? And the variety of ways that they did it is they either did it through CTE. Now, if you see here, there's a couple of sub-bullets. So under CTE, let me put here, nice circle. It's very, very tiny, but basically we're saying, okay, they took a CTE pathway, completed it with C, and and they did one of the following. They either scored a 3 on the SBAC or they took a semester of college coursework. So there's a lot of calculations that happen. And really what the state was trying to do is just trying to capture as many kids as they could with the indicator. And so they used a variety. They said, okay, we know that not all kids want to go to college. Now here it is, as a district, we believe we should prepare all kids to give them the choice, whether they want to go to college or go to career or, or start working. They should have, but we should prepare them. I do really strongly believe that we should be preparing all students to have the choice to make that. So the indicator covers CTE. They can either score on the SBAC with a 3 or better. And here, commendable for St. Helena High School, the college credit course. Even today we had a conversation. Anytime we can have our students do that dual enrollment, what a opportunity we have. It is so awesome. AP is another one. University, the UC requirement that they meet the A through G, but it also, there's a plus one additional criteria. So they have to meet the A through G. That's not good enough to meet it there. They have to do A through G or A through G plus CTE, A through G plus SBAC, A through G plus a semester, A through G 3 or higher on an AP exam. I just wanted to show that there's just a variety of these. And then the last one is the seal of biliteracy. So they earn a seal of biliteracy and they have to score a 3 or better on the SBAC. So there's a variety of pieces. On the next slide, which is also super tiny, but it is on the website, I'm just going to read the numbers to let you know. So remember I told you there was 72 out of 115 students, so 72 of them. So when they did these calculations, they're looking at the percentage out of the 72. So they said, okay, 56% of our kids made it through CTE pathway. That 56% comes from the 41 divided by the 72. So I just wanted to show you the math. So it's basically saying of the 72 that showed us that they were prepared, 54% of them made it through this way. And it could be the same kids. They could have done the CTE pathway. They could have made it through A through G. They could have made it through the bilingual, through the path of biliteracy with a variety. So 62.6 is still very healthy. Like anything else, we can do better. And so trying to increase the A through G, trying to increase the number of students that attend courses, more than anything, making sure that they're prepared to make a choice. Okay, so that was it on the college and career. Next slide. So reflections, and I've talked about those as I went through this presentation. Very evident that when we were focusing on English learner progress, we're showing that we are moving our kids through. Next year, the state will be adding a subgroup of LETELs, or long-term English learners, as well. That will be a subgroup. So being able to see how our students that have been here for more than 6 years doing. And so that is a challenge that not just St. Helena does, California has. Once our kids get to where they can speak English, we can speak it. It's showing the academics. So I use the word orange. So overall, if you look at our dashboard, kind of orange is kind of hanging out. It's just the predominant color there. And so the good news is that because we're a small district, and if we're able to have focus, we should easily be able to move that needle over to yellow and green and blue. But really, it's about making sure that our kids get what they need and being able to show that progress. And so understanding where we are is important. So in order to meet a goal, you need to know where are you and where do we want to go. So being able to take the dashboard and understand, okay, so what's the percentage that we need to shoot for to lower chronic absenteeism? That helps. That just, when you have that real goal, it helps. It helps the school sites, it helps the teachers, and even if you were to share with the parents. And so when I have the next DLAC, being able to share that with parents and being able to show them where that, they want individual conversations, I can have that, but as a whole, being able to understand what that means and how important that is. All right, next slide. Next steps, I spoke a little bit. So reviewing the data with leadership to reflect on the progress. One of the things I didn't do is I didn't spend time on subgroups, because that was the overall and the overview. We have subgroups that we might be as a district sitting in the orange, but we have subgroups sitting in the blue, and we got subgroups perhaps in the red or in the yellow. So being able to hone in and find out what that is. Updating metrics, so making sure that when we rewrite and revise our LCAP, we have some of these metrics when we're setting our goals, being able to use some of these to set that goals to be able to help us. And then presenting the dashboard to parent groups and to others for them to also understand what does that mean. And then importantly, what is the root cause of the results? You know, we should know why we're getting the results we're getting. That's extremely important. All right, I think that was it. Okay, and the last set of slides, I'm not going to have you click on them. So I made a comment that next year. So one of the things that the state, as you know, released this December 15th. They call it their fall release. You know that's not fall. So they're working on every year moving forward, releasing it sooner, November and then October, so that we can have this in a timely fashion, so that we could do a little more with the results. That's important. And then they'll be adding some additional subgroups. I went ahead and just put appendices just because I know how hungry you are to know information, but I won't talk about that today. I just left them there, and I will be available for additional questions if you like after or now, of course, if I can answer anything that wasn't covered that I said I would.
Thank you. You covered a lot, so appreciate that. But let's just see if there's any public comment on this agenda item. Could you come? I'm sorry, can you come to the podium, please?
Perhaps this was covered, but why is there no data on the chronic absenteeism at the high school?
I would venture to say, I would have to look on that specifically, but I know that my answer was that it's because it's in periods. And so like the high school, the elementary and the primary, they take their attendance by the whole day, whether a kid is here or not. However, they do it for the middle school. So I'm not specifically 100% sure, but it has to do that it's period reporting. Is there anything you want to add to that, Mr. Cinto? Do you have any? Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we could probably calculate chronic absenteeism is 10% of the days that you've been enrolled. So at any given time, 10% could be, on day one if you're absent, you're chronically absent.
Yeah.
So it's something we monitor
internally. Yeah. Yeah, so that was my answer before. It's like, okay, it's because it's period, because in the previous district it's the whole day and we're able to report it, but the middle school does period reporting, but yet we report it for them at the state level. So I'm not sure if why they do it there, why they're not doing it for the high school. So that's just the best answer.
Well, as a district parent, that would be the most concerning of what you shared with us today. To call it a dashboard is a misnomer. A dashboard is something you can look at and have a clear understanding, and this certainly is not. But that's just a labeling issue.
Right.
And as far as the suspension, I would not try to suppress that rate. The leaders at the sites, I think, would have good reason for suspension. So to look to improve that might be short-sighted.
Thank you for the comment.
Yeah, and taking these comments and being able to share when we have this to the state, when we're at meetings, and be able to report, like, why don't we have that? They're always taking feedback for that. So.
Okay, thank you. Trustees, any questions, clarifications, comments?
Well, I have an action that I am allowed to set up time with you later to talk about all the questions that I might have on the dashboard. Just going to put that out there. But on the next steps, one of the things that I think is new, in my many years of attending parent group meetings, I've never had someone come and talk about the results of a dashboard. So is this something new that you are bringing to parent group meetings?
Yeah. So the one that I spoke to for myself is the DLAC committee that I have, but I know that in working with our sites, I think being able to bring it in a way that makes sense. So I put it out there, and I know that I spoke to Mr. I keep saying, want to say Mr. Ryan, Mr. Andrew, because the two first names just throwing me off. Andrew. So yes, that is something, especially if parents are, interested. What we want is be able to bring information that makes sense to parents and for them to understand. So I think it's important to give them an overview, especially when you're doing your school plans, and be able to say, here's how we're doing. So.
And I think just opening up the conversation of, we see a lot of orange, here's why. Mm-hmm. And talking through it in a parent group setting can start off well, here's why I'm not concerned, right? So I commend if you are going to be able to do that at the parent level.
Yeah. Thank you.
Trustees, anything? No. I think one of the things on these next steps, and I know that there's nothing definitive, but I'm kind of curious of like the timeline on all this. So, I mean, the parent, are we trying to, is this going to be completed by the end of the year? Obviously, some of this is ongoing by looking at it. You're always going to be reviewing data with the leadership, trying to determine, root cause. But I'm just curious for our monitoring and understanding where, how does this look for us? Do we just have to wait till next year to see what the next dashboard comes back? Or how do we, where do we fit in the monitoring process?
I would answer that part of what I've seen here, and as far as how St. Helena is doing, it's like, for example, the chronic absence. So one, we need to chunk the data and the information for you. If I bring it to you, it's like a fire hose. So the fact that you already had the deep dive on data, this is all connected. So you've got pieces of that. When we update our LCAP metric, you'll be able to see when we're updating our metrics as far as setting those goals. The presentations, being able for me to provide those in a Friday memo, kind of let you know, hey, we did this presentation, and some of your parents in the district being able to see that. And I think reviewing the data, I think when our principals come up and present, now we've had 2 presentations, but the other 2 being able to give you tidbits of that piece of it. And I think I was trying to see, like, can I predict where we will land with the dashboard? And I think some of those metrics we should be able to do as far as being able to predict, but we're always careful, like in a public, right, being able to give ourselves a color before it's an official color, but being able to look at what's our absenteeism rate. So when we have our committees, being able to say, up to now, where are we with discipline? And I think we did that. We have so many suspension rates, so many suspensions already in the district. So I think President Pelosi, I think part of that is being able to progress monitor and bring you the information when it's relevant and it makes sense. And at each one of these meetings, it's one of the things we've got to keep the focus on student achievement, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And it takes many forms, right? It's not just data points, it can also be stories.
Right. Exactly. Thank you.
Well, and so to Trustee Pelosi's point, I know in the past we're certainly not monitoring this, but what we are presented our local assessment scores, kind of our MAP scores, and we're not seeing like the raw data, but we're seeing how students are increasing through time or not. So that would be helpful to see, like the local assessments. I mean, it's interesting that we don't see any of that, because we do have to wait like a year to see, how our students are performing.
And I think,
did I see that correctly? Does that sound?
Yeah, I mean, we do have the other items that come through, through us, but it's the dashboard. I completely agree with the public comment. It's like,
I do too.
That's why I think it's important to take this to parents, because I can get concerned if somebody doesn't understand this and looks at, for example, like us being in the orange at the high school, they could think it's the entire high school that's reflective of. And it really requires so much explanation and education around understanding what this one data point means, and I applaud, I do think it's important to take it on the road, so to speak.
Okay.
And it's also important for me that when it is being presented, that it's also just a snapshot of 2 days of testing, where, we don't know during that time what our student, there might be some things going on with their family at that point or something where they're not testing as well as they normally do. So, I mean, that just needs to be part of the conversation as well.
Each one of those little tabs, I'm going to say it could be its own little, there's so many layers, but I agree with you. And I was going to say, being able to just understanding, working here in St. Helena for about 6 months, which is, I think I've just continued to learn so much. I feel like talk to myself, hitting my stride, just kind of learning. I can, recognize people, classrooms, teachers, community members. But what I will say is this: I think the PLC process, one of the things that I know that I can speak to is being able to, or at least being able to share, is, being able to just share with you, like when we do a PLC and we set a goal, how that's how we're monitoring at the site. So being able to give you a snapshot of, so what's the percentage overall that our students are meeting these goals. So I think providing you a little more information on kind of the PLC process and moving things through, letting you know that we're putting those strategies in place, I think is a good place to make sure that we're not just hoping that things are getting better. So what are we doing, you know, as we continue to move forward? So this is a process, and I think I've heard Mr. Heller talk about it. It's just, you know, it's a crock pot. I mean, some of these pieces, you know, are going to take some time. Other ones, we should be seeing some immediate, you know, improvement because kids only have a grade one time, right?
Right.
Yeah. Anything else?
So I guess I am a little confused then of if we have MAP and PLC tracking, at least primary and elementary, maybe in the works at the older or at the higher 2 grades, schools, not grades, both. Why can't we have some sort of, here's how things are progressing throughout the school year?
We can
And I
provide
guess-
something like that. I don't know if we'd want it in
Is
a
that some-
presentation format or Friday memo, but once we're getting ready, I know mid-year map is coming up, so then we'll have the fall and the mid-year. We'll be able to show that progress.
Right.
I mean, I want to keep us high level, so maybe some high level
Yeah.
data on that.
So, and this is, we won't get bogged down in this, but if I'm hearing what my fellow trustees are saying is, if the governing board is charged with student achievement, and, you know, I think a more frequent exposure to some of the data to see if progress is being made was presented to us, you would feel more comfortable. Is that what I'm hearing you say? To a
Yes.
degree, I mean, and I know we have the deep dives on the data sessions. I think part of it is staff capacity, you know, of assembling that and presenting it at a meeting and whatnot. But why don't we? Am I close to what you're trying to say?
I mean, it sounds like they are doing this presentation already at the sites.
Right.
I'm guessing, at a school site level, at least at the lower 2, it would be nice to be able to see what they're seeing
Okay.
at a high level.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Does that make sense
Yeah.
to you?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, I agree with Sean. I just think it might be gleaning out the best points and things we need to improve, because I think if you took this, I admit it, this was really hard for me, and it's just my brain, and thankfully our superintendent spent a long time with me, but it was the color, the blocks, and I think he's like, okay, you need to get this. But he was very patient. I think to hand this to a parent would be like, So I think we have some great positives. We obviously have things to work on. And I think, I'm going to say this every time, I think we need to be out there telling this to the community too. We've got great things going at this school. And I think you're right. I think transparency is great, but let's make it easy to understand and follow, which is nothing against you at all, please. It's just California's infinite brain and how to
Yes.
make it clear to understand isn't always working everybody's brain. But thank you for getting us through all
Yes,
that.
thank you very much. I appreciate it. I mean,
Can I?
yeah, of course.
Okay. Veronica, thank you so much. The one thing, of course, I'm the bad news bearer on the dais right now, but the one thing that I really am concerned about is when I'm looking at the 2017 math scores, I'm just using the RLS as an example, and then looking at the math scores for 2023, there is such a significant drop, and I know that COVID is a big part of it, but what I would like, what I'm requesting for our parents, the ones that do the deep dive on the dashboard, need to have some understanding from the district as to what's being done at the RLS to improve those points. 2017, our ELs were at 73 points below standard. Today, they're at 123 points below standard. Our white students were at 35 points above standard in 2017 and are now at 6.2 above standard. So I'm concerned as a board member about that difference. And I know that COVID has played a big part of it across the entire state when it comes to math, but I do appreciate what's going on at the RLS with all 3 math teachers being on board with building thinking classrooms. With our smaller class sizes. But I would like the district to be prepared to answer to such a major decline.
And when you said 2017, what I'm just curious, what slide are you looking at?
I was using the California dashboard, and I went into details.
And you went back. Okay. Just wanted
Yeah.
to make sure my okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I need the dais to be, the board to be aware of this big drop. Just that it's very concerning to me and to what the, to know that hopefully.
And
what the
and I
teachers are
don't
doing
have the
with
2017 CASP in my head to tell you when. So when we're looking at comparing what it, and it's not an excuse, it's just as I'm
No, of
thinking
course not, I
about
know.
when we're thinking about what the test included. There's a lot of pieces when we're not looking at. I think we need to look at those cohorts. So I don't have that in front of me. I know with the deep dive we looked at. So how are those 2017 students doing right now versus the 2017 class of 2017 and sixth grade or whatever you were looking and 2023. Just being able to, that's where it kind of takes, we need to take our time to look at those pieces and try to figure that out.
Those involving across
to see,
3 grades.
yeah,
So
even
it's
what was
one
tested.
grade.
Yeah, even because I know there was changes to the assessment. So there's all these pieces that we need to take a look at. I think being able to look at, what are we doing now to accelerate the achievement of our students at our middle school in math? What is it we're doing? I think when we talk about the question, for me, that's the question that I think of, that I want to have the answer to for you. But it's about working with our middle school to make sure the ownership sits there, and I'm here to provide the support and the training and whatever else we need. So I think we can still have that conversation. I can't answer all that today, but being able to say, okay, so what is it we're doing to move up and be in a place where we're making great progress so that our kids are ready, right?
Yeah. And that's why I do like the report of looking at the MAPS test and looking at the assessments that we see twice a year, in addition to this, because this is just a snapshot. But if you look at it, it's an alarming snapshot. So we need to recognize that and to also be able to address it and the changes that we're making.
Yeah, if I could interject, President Pelosi, I would request, since this falls under my side of the house, that I have clarity on what the board would seek in terms of presentations and how frequent, and what you would like to see, because as you mentioned, staff capacity, there's a lot of, we could give a lot. Tonight was a lot. This was an hour presentation, so we could give a lot of data, and some of it may not be as pertinent or relevant. So I think it's important for us to target what the board would like to see instead of just volumes of data.
Right.
Because I think it's important to really be strategic in what we're looking at.
Okay, understood.
I would like, thank you, Mr. Heller. I would like to monitor math progress at the RLS right now, more than just once a year.
Okay.
Especially with all teachers there on board with building thinking and the smaller class sizes. Just because I'm looking at the 2017 versus the 2023. And looking at 2022, last year they were 96 points below. 2023, the ELs are 123 below. So we're moving away from COVID with our ELs, but they're not improving. And I know there's a lot to look at, but I really want that to be more of a focus, more of a report to
Trustees,
monitor that.
would that,
I would actually probably have said it the other way around, is you guys are already monitoring. So take what you have already that you're using to monitor and educate us rather than create something new.
I agree with that. Yeah, I mean, I'm not wanting to reinvent the wheel.
I don't know.
right, but I think he needs a little more detail.
How do you know
on-
you're making progress? I guess
I'd like
would
to
be
know, well, I guess I'd like to know specifically what you would like to see. Again, we could present data and lots of reports, and it probably is better suited for a study session, which we already conducted on data, because we have a lot of conversation around it, so, and that's fine. But in a board meeting, it gets tricky, because we could have a monthly presentation on data, right?
Okay,
And
when is the
The second
Maps.
map is
Yeah.
in February, and the results might may be ready for March, but may not be.
Okay, could
So
we
that
just
makes
look,
it. We could try.
could we just look at the fall, since we did one and it's January, can we just look at the fall and the March one later this spring?
Yeah,
That would be
that's easy to produce in
Awesome.
a very.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that's I see a nodding of heads.
Okay.
And we'll plan for just that specific directive right there, Mr. Heller.
Great. And if something more is needed after that, or a change in how we do data presentations, I think we just need to talk about
Yeah, and
the
those can
structure
get
of
honed
that.
in on one-on-ones with the superintendent, and then you can be brought in on those, I would think. If it's starting to seem like it's coloring outside the lines and going all over the place. But I think that's something that should be when we have our one-on-ones, but let's start with that. Is everybody comfortable starting with that in the spring?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to finish by saying, because we need to monitor the academic achievement as the board, as you said before, by giving us the snapshot, we may see something that concerns us, but I think it's important that we take a look at the MAP scores to gain a bigger picture, and so it's not as alarming as just one piece of information from the dashboard.
Yeah.
Me bringing this up is not pointing fingers at anyone, but it's concerning. So it makes me want to say, let's look at more information, because that information may be more accurate for student achievement than this one piece, which is the CASP. If that makes sense.
It does make sense to me. Does that make sense
It does.
to Executive Cabinet? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. Thank you, Laura. Okay, are we good, trustees? Thank you very much. Okay, well, we've got a couple of resolutions here to get through. On 12A is board-related items, the adoption of Resolution 23-19, the School Board Recognition Month. Mr. Aurelio, please.
Well, the California School Board Association does recognize January as School Board Recognition Month. So this evening we are going to read a resolution and hope it's kind of awkward that you approve your own resolution, but we hope you approve your own recognition this evening. We all know how hard y'all work for very little. You do get a little pay, but not much pay, and that's really a testament to the energy you all put into this district, and it's tremendous. So, do you want me to read it? Because I can read it. I don't think it's. I mean, I think I'll read it. So the School Board Recognition Month, Resolution 23-19. Whereas an excellent public education system is vital to the quality of life for all California citizens and communities, and whereas our public education system has faced unprecedented circumstances these past 3 years as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and whereas our governing board continues to act to ensure children's academic, social-emotional, physical, and mental health needs are met at a time when students need consistent services most, and whereas school board members continue to advocate to best serve the children in our community each and every day, and whereas local school board members are committed to children and believe that all children can be successful learners and that the best education is tailored to the individual needs of the child, and whereas school board members work closely with parents, educational professionals, and other community members to create the healthiest environments possible where all students can thrive. And whereas school board members are responsible for building and maintaining the structure that provides a solid foundation for our school system. And whereas school board members are strong advocates for public education and are responsible for communicating the needs of the school district to the public and the public's expectations of the district, and whereas the mission of public schools to meet the diverse educational needs of all children and to empower them to become competent, productive contributors to a democratic society and ever-changing world is more poignant than ever before. Now, therefore, we, the members of the St. Helena School community, hereby declare our appreciation to the members of the governing board and proclaim the month of January 2024 as School Board Recognition Month in the St. Helena Unified School District. I urge all community members to join me in recognizing and the dedication and hard work of local school board members in working with them to create an education system that meets the needs of our children.
Well, thank you very much. Is there anyone who wishes to publicly comment on this agenda item? No. Trustees, any questions about this agenda item?
Shouldn't balloons cascade from the ceiling now or something?
Yeah, exactly. Is there a motion to approve the adoption of Resolution 23-19 as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Carolyn, would you like to cast a vote?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second. Oh, sorry.
I'll second.
Okay, Ms. Madrigal will conduct a roll call vote.
Trustee Wagner?
Aye.
Trustee Wolf?
Aye.
Trustee Kerr?
Aye.
Trustee Mora?
Aye.
Trustee Simon?
Aye.
President Pelosi?
Aye, motion carries. Thank you. 12B, adoption of Resolution 2318, recognizing the significance of Black history. Mr. Aurelio, please.
So we have a resolution that is for February, and we will approve it in January. I'm wondering, Carolyn, if you would like to read the resolution for us tonight.
Resolution 23/18. Whereas the month of February is officially celebrated as Black History Month, which dates back to 1926 when Dr. Carter G. Woodson declared it as an important time in February to recognize the heritage and achievement of Black Americans, and whereas the St. Helena Unified School District supports the significance of Black History Month to honor the contributions of Black Americans in the nation's history, to learn more about the past and to better understand the experiences that have shaped the nation, and whereas the governing board acknowledges that the national theme of Black History Month for 2024 is African American and the Arts, a theme that reflects on the varied history and life of African American arts and artisans, and whereas the St. Helena Unified School District recognizes that each student needs an opportunity to understand the common humanity underlying all people, to develop pride in their own identity and heritage, and to understand, respect, and accept the identity and heritage of others. And whereas the St. Helena Unified School District greatly values ethnic and racial diversity and believes it enriches and strengthens our nation. And now, therefore, it is resolved that the governing board of the St. Helena Unified School District here supports the proclamation of February 2024 as Black History Month in the St. Helena Unified School District and encourages all schools to commemorate this occasion with appropriate activities.
Thank you. Okay. Excuse me, is there any public comment on this agenda item? No? Trustees, questions on this agenda item? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the adoption of Resolution 23-18 as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Carolyn, would you like to cast a vote?
Yes.
Great. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Ms. Madrigal will conduct a roll call vote.
Trustee Wagner?
Aye.
Trustee Wolf?
Aye.
Trustee Kerr?
Aye.
Trustee Mora?
Aye.
Trustee Simon?
Aye.
President Pelosi?
Aye, motion carries. 12C is conduct the District of Choice Lottery and create the student waiting list for 2024-25. Mr. Aurelio, please.
Thank you. So annually with District of Choice, we do conduct a lottery. It's a public lottery. We are actually going to be doing that during hopefully a break. Instead of
I just wanted
sitting
you to
and watching.
introduce this
Correct.
right now, and
Okay. So we will be doing a District of Choice lottery. We had applications open from September 1st, 2023 through November 30th, 2023, and those applications are for school year 24-25.
Thank you. Is there any public comment on this agenda item? Okay, trustees, any questions about this electronic lottery that is about to happen? Okay, so staff will conduct this lottery. It takes approximately 7 to 10 minutes, maybe. Is that correct? 5 to 7 minutes. So at this point, if you need to use the restroom, stretch your legs, get some water, tea, feel free to do so, and then just give. And then we'll thank you for your patience while we do that. Resume. Ms. Madrigal, lottery is completed.
The lottery has been conducted, and all families will be notified by the end of the month, but likely next week.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to go on to 12D, adoption of Resolution 23-20, District of Choice caps for the 2024-25 school year. Mr. Aurelio, please.
All right, good evening. So what you see up on the screen is the proposed caps for the 24-25 school year, and I want to just provide a little bit of the rationale on why you're seeing the numbers that you're seeing. So back in the November board meeting, the regular board meeting, I did pose the question to the board around enrollment and our sort of status of our enrollment over time. We know we've been a declining enrollment school district. We've seen a decline now pretty consistently over the past decade plus. And the board was asked if they were willing to commit to having us try to increase our enrollment to sort of, or at least curb the declining enrollment. Further, I do want to point out that it's on the positive side, and you don't see this number up there, but comparing our number of applicants from one year, last year, to this year, we've seen an increase in the number of applications. Last year we had 89 total applicants, and this year we have 106 applicants. To me, that's great. That shows that our families want to bring their students here. That, you know, the choice word in District of Choice is really important to understand. We're kind of, if you're coming to St. Helena, you have a purpose to be here. If you want to send your kids here, you value education because you want better for your child. And I think that's something to keep in mind when we're thinking about out of district enrollment. For the most part, families who want to come to St. Helena, they're committed to coming here and they want their kids here for a reason. And I think I'd be really sad if those numbers were zero and that no one wants to come here. So I think it's, you know, kudos to the district and, you know, this organization that people see us as a gem in the valley and rather have their kids come to our schools. So that's another piece. We also, in the fall, and even this evening, we talked about sort of the academic progress we were making. We heard about the great work at the elementary school. We've heard about the professional learning communities and our focus and attention on improvement. In the fall, we had a board study session. One of the big takeaways for me was that when students are with us in this district, for every 5 years, we're seeing at least 6 years of growth. And so that's really important, especially when we think about what's happening to our numbers, especially for our high school. Our high school keeps getting smaller, and we want to, if we can get kids into our system sooner, we have more of an impact on their education. So that's one thing to keep in mind when we start setting our caps. Thinking of our high school, we've talked a lot about programs and trying to maintain the richness that we have at the high school when we can do the drama, the arts, you know, ag, sports. And we know as we start to get smaller and smaller, we have to make some tough choices about programs. Are they sustainable? We also have to, we maybe start limiting what our kids can and cannot take. And then the richness that diversity, both of race, thought, ideology, brings to the culture of our district and school. So thinking about our high school, backwards mapping, how do we get that school to be more like a 500 student school? We need to bring students in. So you'll see the caps here for the high school are 125 each. That would make a 500 student school, which we find is kind of a sweet spot for our high school. So just quickly over the numbers. At the primary school, the TK, I set the cap at 16. We have the limitation of having only one TK classroom. And so, you know, the likelihood that we're able to accept applications is probably pretty low for transitional kinder. With this year, for example, we had 17 students in a classroom in TK. And we know that the age is expanding 2 more months worth of birthdays. So we predict that class will most likely fill up. For kinder, first and second grade, we set the cap at 70. We currently run 4 classrooms per grade level there. We are considering, if our numbers continue to stay low, what we can do creatively with staffing to support students, and maybe running 3 classrooms and doing some creative work. So there has been definitely the energy to get more students into our system at those younger grades. At the elementary level, grades 3, 4, and 5, we do have slightly larger classrooms. We also run 4 teachers per, and the caps that I'm proposing are 90, 90, and 95 for those grades. As you heard from Dr. Emery, tremendous work is happening at that school, and they're really proud of the work they're doing with data, with their instruction. I was really excited to hear about the 3rd grade phonics as well, and it's a tremendous effort and energy that's being put in at that school. At the middle school, I'm setting the caps or proposing the caps at 100 per grade level. Just a little reasoning and background there, coupled with getting our kids into our system sooner so we can have a greater impact. We do know we get a number of our students from Pope and Howell Mountain, and many of those students do look to try to come sooner than high school. At high school, they're no longer a DOC candidate. They just get to enroll in our high school. So there is an opportunity for us to bring them in and have a greater impact in what they do, because they eventually potentially will be our students later. So I will leave it there and open it up for any questions or discussion, and we ask that you adopt the caps.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone who wishes to publicly comment on this agenda item? No? Okay. Trustees, questions, commentary on this agenda item?
I'm just curious with TK, because it is more, available to different dates now. What if we had 25 people show up that want to sign up for TK? What do we do in that case?
So
I'm just wishful thinking.
No, could be a legitimate challenge for us, which is resident TK families, right? We don't turn residents away. So if they're enrolling TK, we would have to then look at staffing. The challenge, because I thought about it, could we do 2 transitional kinder classrooms? There's a lot of interest in TK, even through the out-of-district process. There is a credentialing challenge with that. We might have to post and hire. I'm going to ask Chris to speak on that because he's our HR expert.
You're right on track there. Right now we have 1 teacher that's credentialed in early childhood development, and that would pose a challenge to us if it exceeded 24, to where we would have to post and hire an additional teacher.
And the state ratio is 12 to 1 now, but it's going down to 10 to 1 for TK. But that ratio is not just the teacher ratio, it's adult to student ratio. So a teacher and an aide bring that ratio down together for TK only.
Okay.
And if our numbers do go up, I know we talked about being committed to being able to offer after-school care for our TK. Are we still trying to continue that program?
We are. So we are using ELOP. Now I'm blanking on the acronym, but you all know what I'm talking about, the Extended Learning Opportunity Program. Good job, Trustee Mora. I had just a total brain freeze on the actual acronym. We do use those dollars to fund. Right now it's little backpacks, and we are funding it for any student who wants to attend the aftercare. We're obviously going to be examining that program, if that's the program we want to continue, or trying to build an in-house program, but there will be aftercare provided to TK.
Carolyn, any thoughts or questions?
No, I think I agree with the caps that are presented in the picture above.
Okay, thank you. Other trustees?
I can go first. This will come as no surprise. I have been pretty consistent with not wanting to increase a lot. So if you haven't heard me say that before, sorry, you get to hear it now. I most specifically am concerned about the large increase proposed at RLS. So for the most part, it's adding 15 spaces, additional spaces. And when I looked across at the average number of students per period, let's say 7th grade English, there are 4 periods. And the class sizes right now, I'm just saying for the 7th graders, because that's our biggest class, I believe, at RLS. I think. No, wait.
RLS
I'm forgetting
current.
where it was. I'm just going to
Yes,
say for seventh grade
current class
now,
7th grade.
there are 24 kids in one class, 21 in another, and then 20. If we add in, I'm gonna, maybe my math is now wrong, looking at these, 13 more kids, that's 3 more kids per class, that's 27 kids for English, 20 plus 4, 24 kids, and then 23. I think those are kind of big right now at RLS with a lot of other things that we want to get in motion. It's just my gut. The primary seemed, sorry, if you want me to go through them, this primary, in the past, you've asked us to go school by school. I felt comfortable with the primary, again, but we haven't reached the capacity with the numbers, the 60 before, but I know the applications are higher. I've kind of felt more comfortable still at the 85s, or it's 80, and then you bumped it up to 90. I just think the classes, I don't know, I don't have a good justification for that one. I have a stronger feeling about RLS. I'm fine with the high school. The only change is adding 5 more to the freshman class, making it equal to the others.
Correct.
I guess for me also, just to say, like, I've been on the board a year, and I feel like we've talked about it 5 different times at the board meetings, and it would be nice to just kind of put it to rest for a while, because I love that we're having increased applications. That's awesome, because it shows that we're creating a draw, but I have to make decisions based on the residents of St. Helena, and I would not feel comfortable justifying putting middle school classes, as an example, for English up to 27 kids. I wouldn't. So that's how I feel.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Jeannie, were you ready, or?
One of the things that I looked at, and I'm not going to talk about the caps specifically right now, but I will come back to those. Looking at class size again, as Trustee Mora was, I was actually looking at the high school, at some of their classes that the integrated 1 class. There's some with those. Some of those there was like 28 students in that class, and it looks like there's 28, 27, 26. And that certainly will increase, because that's kind of the entry-level math class coming in, so that'll be kind of like, well, many of those 9th graders may be going into that integrated 1 class. I guess my question that I'm asking is do our site administrators, do they feel comfortable with the additional students coming in? And do they feel like that having classes at 28 at English or for integrated math, do they think that those class sizes are too high at 28, 27 and 28? That would be my question.
Okay. Do you want me to ask? Yeah, I mean, we can always get, the principals are here and they can provide their opinion on it.
Trustee Simon, do you have a question, quick comment?
Yeah, looking at the enrollment caps for TK through 2 at 70, I would approve those. Looking at the high school, 125 students as well, agree with that. My questions and concerns are between 3rd and 8th grade. I would like 3rd to remain at 80, especially historically if you look at the class size reduction program from the late 90s, when the state of California wanted to decrease all the classrooms in K through 3rd to no more than 20 kids per class, because reduced class size helped improve achievement. And that's why I really would like to keep 3rd still at 80. Again, like I said earlier, children in 3rd grade are still learning to read as they begin to read to learn. And I do appreciate the phonics program that the elementary school has included in 3rd grade to bring those reading challenges up for those students, because it still really is a time where we need in my opinion, no more than 20 kids per class to continue to foster their foundation before they get to the intermediate grades of 4th and 5th grade. Also, since I appreciate what is happening at the elementary school under Dr. Embry's charge, I would like to see 4th and 5th closer to 85, not 90 for now. Because of the review of the California dashboard, I don't feel comfortable with 100 kids at the RLS per grade if it were to go up that high. But I do think there should be a gradual increase. So I could land more at around 90 kids per class, especially as we do our new building thinking classrooms model, and we really continue to try to get those scores up in math. So that's what I'm thinking right now. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Did everybody go already?
All right, I'm probably the outlier here. Looking back at some of the historical data we were provided, like 2015, 16, 17, the middle school, those numbers aren't that drastically different than the classes back then. So I don't think it's a huge jump in that. I think, Laura, I kind of disagree. And just my opinion, it's like 22, if we had 22 in the middle years, I don't think that's a huge class size. I think we're very fortunate. I like the numbers at the high school. I don't mind the RLS. Like I said, I think we've had that. And I do think it is good to get some of the kids in at the 6th grade level to give them the opportunity for success all the way through to high school. And I think it's really hard for some of the kids that come to us from Howell Mountain or Pope Valley. They've been in almost a one-room schoolhouse type of situation to now you're changing classes and different things. And I just think it would be an easier transition. So I am more inclined to approve. That's just me.
Thank you. I want to just say that there are elements of everybody's points that I completely agree with. As you well know, I've always been one to harp on the financial aspect of this over the years. But the one thing that has really risen to the top for me in this is I'm looking at this 5 years from now. I'm looking at this 10 years from now. And this is kind of what is driving more of my decision making, because I'm thinking, class sizes of 60 in 1st grade, what does that look like by the time it gets to high school? And it concerns me. And we had the survey feedback that we saw that everybody, an overriding sentiment was the concern of declining enrollment across our district. You did speak to, you had a conversation with Mark, right, from the teachers union?
I did, yes.
Okay. And the teachers union was in support of this as well?
From the teachers union perspective, and I know he's in the room.
Okay,
you
no,
could
that's
do
great.
a nod, maybe.
Okay.
The teachers, we were happy with the numbers. So,
okay.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed to match. Sorry. I spoke to Ruben earlier this week, and the numbers match our staffing. They're historically not unusual numbers. I mean, when I first came to this district, we were 1,600. Now we're right around 1,100, maybe a little bit less. And I don't know the exact numbers of our staff back then, but it seems like our staff has stayed about the same size. Yeah. So we haven't really had a reduction in staff. So as far as load levels per teacher, I didn't see anything that really stood out as a negative.
Great. Thank you. And I was more asking that just the due diligence process had been done, that you spoke to principals, you've spoken to the teachers union representative. Obviously, it's a conversation you had with the executive cabinet as well. So that is not to say that I don't hear your concerns at all, given the data that we saw as well. I just think that if I feel a responsibility to maintain this district, and I'm hoping we may not even reach these numbers, because we don't know if we didn't reach I think it was only all but one grade that we had to turn away.
Just TK last year.
That we still had opening spaces.
Right. If I predicted, just based on what I've seen, these caps totaled 1,301. We would most likely capture a total enrollment of 1,130.
Okay. And I am also in agreement with Trustee Mora that I'd really like to put this to rest. This has really been a very lengthy, ongoing, and we're in the situation, Laura, that we're not pleasing everybody. Obviously, it's just kind of, and I think, and I say this with a total grain of salt, if we had to, we could come back to these next year. I'm not saying we should, but I'm just saying that once we do this, this is not like we can't come back from this. If we find that it's not, but I do think that it is time for us to try to keep St. Helena unified, populated, and offer the programs that that people expect. And I worry about those things. I worry about sports teams going away. Those are equally important to students. Sometimes it's the only thing that kind of keeps them, attached to their school. But again, I'm hearing the concerns, but I would be inclined to vote in favor of these, is where my head is going at this point. So that's where I'll leave it at that, and see if there's another round of conversation you want to have about that, or we can take it to a vote. I just think that right now, if we try to change the numbers again, we're not gonna have a vote tonight. And we've also, we now have a waiting list created, so now it's another month that we would have to potentially try and come back and have agreement on. I do know that we have all one-on-one met with the superintendent to discuss this. I'm assuming that happened for everybody, correct? Did everybody have an opportunity to flesh this out, and to understand the reasoning? So with that, please, if you want to do a little second round of questions or comments, I'm open to that, because I want to make sure everybody has the chance to be heard.
I think the one thing I would add is that for me, it was also the goal 5, financial or fiscal responsibility. I actually question how adding out of district students makes us more financially fiscal decisions. And I haven't had a chance to feel comfortable with that.
Okay.
So that also makes me uncomfortable, is that am I making the right decision of how the spending residents' money on the school district by adding people from outside? I completely get programming and sports. I love that all dearly, believe me. I just want to be able to say that we are spending our taxpayer money the right way from now and years to come, because we take the students on early. They're ours for life, which is great. We want to be that way. I don't feel like you do go back next year. If we go to 100, are we really going to go back? Probably not. I don't know what would make that change, and I guess I just don't. So I don't feel comfortable that it's a fiscally responsible decision to vote yes for me.
Okay.
I'd love to be persuaded.
No,
That's all I wanted to say.
I've been on that end of it many, many times. And then realizing that whereas I used to think that it was entirely more expensive than it actually was. So to your point, and that is information that should have come to you in your decision-making process, is because I've asked it many times, what is the true cost of bringing in an out-of-district student into St. Helena, into Unified, right? There are fixed costs doesn't matter if you've got 3 kids in a class or 30 kids in the class, because the lights got to come on, the teacher has to be there, but what is that cost, and what are we doing to potentially deficit spending, right? And we have had multiple conversations about this, to where it wasn't like $32,000 a student that we were spending on district of choice students. But to that point, and I don't want to put Kay on the spot right now, because
I actually don't have a question about the per student cost increase.
So
That's
you're worried
not-
about, okay, so.
It's totally different, and I
Okay,
won't
sorry.
go into it here. but
Okay, okay.
It's opportunity cost of where we're spending taxpayer money.
Got it. So, and that's, I feel that it's unfortunate that that is a big concern of yours and it did not get answered in an adequate time for you to make this decision. And if that is something that do you want to abstain from a vote because you don't feel like you have everything? No. Okay. All right. I think that's just important to know because, we're charged with making these decisions based on the information we have. So, but Laura, I think you want to say something. Do you want to say something?
I agree with you with growing the
Yeah.
district, and that's why I agree with moving the TK to the increasing TK through 2 caps.
Okay.
Absolutely. But I want to grow it wisely, and I don't think the test scores at certain grades warrant an increase. And I think that we owe it to the students that we have right now. Our EL students, our socioeconomically low students, our Hispanic students, our white students, all the students that fall into those CASPS categories, to focus on our students right now. And you can look at a ton of research, and it's low class sizes and that intimate teaching experience that helps raise test scores. So I'm not saying that I want a really low enrollment where we can't have sports and extracurricular activities. I want all of that. If I look at 90 for 6th through 8th grade, that still means when they go to the high school, we are growing more kids at the high school from our Pope Valley district that comes to our school, from Howell Mountain as well, and to capture some of our private students that live in the district. And so that would, my hope would bring us up to a little over 100 for now. But again, I look at the California dashboard scores and I just don't feel comfortable with adding 100 kids per grade at the RLS because I'm responsible for the students in our district right now.
Okay, understood. Now, Jeannie, you had a question about what the principals feel. Ms. Madrigal, am I in my rules of order here? Can I ask the principal to come up?
Yes.
To ask Mr. Cinto in
Yeah,
particular?
If he wouldn't mind, that would be
Because I think it was around integrated math 1, you had a question, and just in general.
the large sizes, yes. And potentially increase of that.
So the question, can you restate your question?
Yeah, when I was just looking at the integrated one, some of the class periods, they had 27, 28 students. And I guess my question would be, is that manageable for the teacher? Is that something that are we, scheduling wise, can that be changed?
Yeah. I mean, we make a lot of scheduling decisions every year. And actually, I know the 2 classes you're actually talking about. And that was actually a request by the teacher, because if you remember, we sunsetted pre-integrated 1 math this year, so we wanted a more heterogeneous grouping of students. We didn't want it to be overwhelmingly, we clustered those kids within 2 sections, and that teacher specifically requested larger class sizes because too small of a class, you kind of, I've been in BTC classrooms that have very few students. It's much harder to do collaborative group work. Yeah. So that specific teacher, and I know the 2 sections you're looking at, actually requested a larger class size. Okay. But to your point, I mean, that's something we make decisions on every year based on what kids sign up for, how kids matriculate through the system. So it's not, I mean, if you look at our overall student to teacher ratio, I think it's, and Melissa would know this, 14 or 16 to 1 is the overall ratio. But I mean, that can move in any direction every year. I can assign Mr. Farrell to teach a section of math anytime I want. Mrs. Rio, same kind of thing. Like, those things are moving targets, and one section changes those numbers pretty drastically at any given moment. So that's something we do over the summer. We look at all what kids have signed up for, and we make those kind of decisions. But those 2 classes specifically were requested to have larger numbers. Okay. And my only other addition would be, like, thinking about the dashboard discussion we just had and the difference that 5 kids can make in a district of our size. I don't want to forget, like to your point about opportunity costs, we have to pay attention to the difference of a child in those results, because they're all different cohorts and you don't know what you're going to get. So you cannot have this conversation without paying attention to the other conversation, because there's going to be an impact there. And looking at 2017 compared to this year, extremely different cohorts, extremely different students with completely different baselines of where they started and ended. So it's hard to have that conversation and then go here without paying attention to that as well. So if that makes any sense.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Well, and then I just want to, and this is not part of my decision either, but just we have to also think about what our next conversation when we decide whether we want to either continue in district of choice or go to an IDA. And there's going to be additional students that are going to be part of DOC now, which will be on kind of on the fence on whether they're going to be able to be admitted if we go into IDA. Does that make sense? So, like our last month's conversation where our district of choice students were not sure if they're going to be able to move over to IDA because of their resident district. So that's just, it's going to be additional students that we're going to have to be thinking about with that decision. So for me, when I met with Mr. Aurelio, my first thing that I asked him, I said, are our site administrators, are they okay with this? Are they confident in this? Is this something that they want? And it sounds like that's the case. It sounds as though our SHTA, our employees are feeling okay with this. And I've made many of my decisions based on what our site administrators and our teachers would prefer. And so I think that the size is a little bit large here, but I know that this round, we're not going to be bringing that many students in. We're not going to bring in the full, we're going to be bringing in, what did I have it written down, 106, where it's not, so it's quite a bit of students, but it's throughout our district. So I would be okay with this. I'm a little bit hesitant of it. I'm cautious. But I would be okay with this.
I have a question. Does the RLS have the flexibility that the high school does? So we're not putting,
Around scheduling?
around scheduling in the core classes, if we're going to be moving them up to, with 100, are we going to be moving them up?
You mean
more
like adding
to
more
25, 26 kids per class?
Currently,
Core classes?
so right now, and I know Principal Ryan's here, he can correct me if I'm wrong. We run 5 sections of math per grade level.
Yeah, why do we do that in 4 in the other?
And 4 core classes for English, science.
Yeah.
I don't know if, we'll ask Principal Ryan. And if he doesn't have that, I mean, Mr. Heller, you might have some of that background of when that was shifted.
No, I didn't build that schedule, so I don't have the history there. I can venture to, and I didn't have an opportunity to speak with the previous principal about that rationale. So if someone else does know, I mean, I would imagine that keeping math class sizes smaller by having all 5 sections was probably part of it. And then there is an elective component that the other core academic teachers teach as part of their 5th period. But other than that, I don't know. So insofar as planning for next year, that's kind of on the docket. Those conversations are starting right now. So, yeah.
So for lower class size in math is part
So
of
we
the
do have a
reason.
lower class size in math at the RLS.
Okay.
This year's 8th grade's a little different because we have our last remaining integrated math 1 class. I know that cohort's only 9 students in a section of 8th grade.
In 8th grade.
And that one would not be there next year.
I think just my last couple comments would be, I know math has been a struggle, but I think we're all very optimistic with our new leadership at the RLS, and it just sounds like the teachers are excited and things are happening there that maybe haven't been happening in the few years, and maybe there is that opportunity for things to start heading upward. I mean, I think we're all very excited about our new principal, and it sounds like the teachers are very excited about it too. So that'd be my one comment. And Sean, I think it's really hard because I think a strong community needs a really strong school, but I understand it's like but we're paying taxes for our kids to go. But if we don't, well, we need to have a strong public school, I think, for our community. So I totally understand where you're going. But I think if we were tripling our numbers, yeah, you'd be worried. But I think we're still creating a strong public school that our community can be proud of, and that we don't have to get more teachers. I mean, to me, that's huge. We're kind of working when, and obviously there's more Chromebooks, more this and that, but I still kind of feel we're coming in, creating a situation that our community would be happy to see.
So I agree with that. I think, and again, I would also love to see more students early. I also, in the back of my mind, see that our financial budget situation in a year or two is in the red. So that's where I'm nervous.
Is it time to go home? Yeah, I think it might have to be. I mean, I sense that, we can take a vote in at that point, because we're not gonna edit numbers at the dais at this point.
Right.
So, so with that, I'm going to just pose it to a vote. Is there a motion? Sorry, we were talking so long, my screen went to sleep here. Is there a motion to approve the adoption of 23-20 as presented? Am I in the right thing or no? Did I
Yes.
say the right? Okay.
23-20.
Thank you.
I will make that motion.
Carolyn, would you like to cast a vote?
Yes.
Okay, great. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Ms. Magical will conduct a roll call vote.
Trustee Wagner?
Aye.
Trustee Wolf?
Aye.
Trustee Kerr?
Aye.
Trustee Mora?
No or nay? I don't know.
No. Trustee Simon?
No.
President Pelosi?
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you for the very valid discussion.
Yeah, thank you.
I do appreciate it very much. Thank you. And thank you, staff, for sticking around and answering questions for us as well this evening. Okay. We're going to go into Human Resources now, 13A. Mr. Heller, consideration of approval for the resolution 2316, skipping and competence criteria.
All right. How about some easier items to digest and vote on? So the board is asked this evening to approve Resolution 2316, which establishes a skipping and bumping process for certificated employees in alignment with California Education Code 44955D. This process would allow employees with less seniority but more experience in particular areas of need to skip a more senior employee. The conditions for potential district needs are listed within the resolution and when this situation may occur. I do want to share with the board and the community at this time the district is not pursuing any layoffs, but this is something that we do every year to establish this criteria in case there is a need that suddenly arises in the next couple of months that precipitates us to use one of these two resolutions. So I would ask for your approval.
Thank you. Is there anyone who wishes to publicly comment on this agenda item? Trustees, any questions about this agenda item? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the adoption of Resolution 23-16 as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Madrigal will conduct a roll call vote.
Trustee Wolf?
Aye.
Trustee Kerr?
Aye.
Trustee Mora?
Aye.
Trustee Simon?
Aye.
President Pelosi?
Aye, motion carries. 13B is consideration of approval for Resolution 23-17, order of layoff for certificated employees and tie-breaking criteria. Mr. Heller again, please.
Yes, so similar to the previous resolution, the board's asked to approve this resolution 2317, which establishes an order of layoff of certificated employees in the district in alignment with California Education Code 44955B, not D. Again, we have not exercised the need for layoffs in March, but this is just done as a precaution in case there is a need, so I would ask for your approval.
Thank you. Is there anyone who wishes to publicly comment on this agenda item? No. Trustees, any questions about this agenda item?
No.
Is there a motion to approve the adoption of Resolution 23-17 as presented?
I will make that motion.
Motion here. We got a motion here. Is there a second?
I will second.
Okay. Ms. Madrigal will conduct a roll call vote.
Trustee Wolf?
Aye.
Trustee Kerr?
Aye.
Trustee Mora?
Aye.
Trustee Simon?
Aye.
President Pelosi?
Aye. Motion carries. Item 13C, review initial sunshine proposal from St. Helena Unified School District to CSEA number 287 for collective bargaining negotiations. Mr. Heller, again, please.
Yes, so the current 3-year collective bargaining agreement with CSCA will expire on June 30th of 2025. However, the current CBA states that Article 15 will be a reopener in the 23-24 school year. So the district is required to share articles of interest during the negotiations process known as sunshining to be clear and transparent in our negotiations process. So the district is presenting this as, I think it's an informational item this evening, and we will bring it back for it's an action item? Okay, so then we're going to take action tonight. However, it will come back for a second reading in February for public input before final approval.
Great, thank you. Is there anyone who wishes to publicly comment on this agenda item? Trustees, any questions about this agenda item? No. Okay. Is there a motion to approve the sunshine proposal from St. Helena Unified School District to CSEA number 287 for collective bargaining as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Madrigal will conduct a roll call vote.
Trustee Wolf?
Aye.
Trustee Kerr?
Aye.
Trustee Mora?
Aye.
Trustee Simon?
Aye.
President Pelosi?
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay. 14A, under Business Operations, review and consider approval of the 2022-23 audit report. Dr. Vang, please.
Thank you. In front of you, you have a hardbound copy of the district's 2022-23 audit report. Our auditors, Christy Wine Associates, have completed. We have 2 non-material findings. Neither one of these have a cost associated with them. Both of these 2 findings have solutions to them. So we have, I've completed, based on the auditor's recommendation, we've completed responses that we will implement for next year. So that's already in place. And right now, unless there are any questions, I will just need the board's approval. And I do have 2 extra copies if anybody wants.
You're going to autograph them as well. Is there anyone participating or public, anybody in the audience who wishes to publicly comment on this agenda item? Okay. Trustees, questions, comments about this agenda item? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the 2022-23 audit report as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Carolyn, would you like to cast a vote? Yes. Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Madrigal will conduct a roll call vote.
Trustee Wagner?
Aye.
Trustee Wolf?
Aye.
Trustee Kerr?
Aye.
Trustee Mora?
Aye.
Trustee Simon?
Aye.
President Pelosi?
Aye. Motion carries. Okay. 14B is contracts over $25,000 for January 2024. Dr. Vang again, please.
We have 2 contracts over $25,000. The first is Sterling. This is the contract to purchase new student devices for next school year. We're purchasing them this year so that our IT department will have time to image and deploy the devices. I believe our IT director, Mr. Derek Machado, is here if there are additional questions in regards to our device refreshment plan for next school year. And then the second item that we have, as you all know, is the trip hazards. So this is phase 2, part 2 of phase 2.
Right. Thank you. Is there anyone participating via Zoom or present who wishes to publicly comment on this agenda item? Okay. Trustees, any questions about this agenda item?
No, but mainly because I wanted to thank Derek. The details that you provided on the thought process and the why behind purchasing all new equipment for the high school students out of the normal cycle just helped me understand the whole thought process and really feel comfortable that it's like the right investment to be making right now. So thank you.
I agree with that, Derek. I had a lot of questions, and I appreciate your explanation for that surprising price tag at the high school. And it makes a lot of sense. And I know you're a busy man, so I appreciate the time that you spent really educating me and helping me to understand the need for it now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was great questions. So thank you, trustees. You guys asked really great questions, and you provided very detailed answers. So gold star for you. Any other further questions or comments, trustees? No? Okay. Okay, so with that, is there a motion to approve the contracts over $25,000 as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Carolyn, would you like to cast a vote?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Miss Madrigal will conduct a roll call vote.
Trustee Wagner?
Aye.
Trustee Wolf?
Aye.
Trustee Kerr?
Aye.
Trustee Mora?
Aye.
Trustee Simon?
Aye.
President Pelosi?
Aye. Motion carried. Thank you. Okay. We are at 15A, which is our future agenda items. You will see we have a study session on building thinking classrooms. We have a mid-year evaluation of the superintendent, followed by our regular board meeting a little bit later than normal. It's on February 22nd for a couple, as we approved at the last meeting with the calendar. So we got quite a bit on there, looking ahead for us. But of course, do you have any subjects for future agenda items, trustees? Laura, I will say on the board policy committee that's coming up in February, I will not be here. Okay. So if you, hopefully you can attend and report out at the February board meeting would be great. Okay.
What is a consolidated application?
That is our CONAP application that we do twice a year. There's the winter and the spring release, which reports out our federal dollars, Title I, Title II, Title III, Title IV. In fact, it is due on Monday.
So glad I asked. Thank you.
I'll be working on that, and I'll most likely be on the February board agenda.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, so with that, everybody, thank you for your time and patience this evening. Is 16A adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll make a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Miss Madrigal will conduct a roll call vote.
Trustee Wagner?
Aye.
Trustee Wolf?
Aye.
Trustee Kerr?
Aye.
Trustee Mora?
Aye.
Trustee Simon?
Aye.
President Pelosi?
Aye. Motion carried. Meeting has ended at 9:48 p.m. Thank you again, everybody. I know it was a long one.